Chapter 1279. The Chaos Dragon Bone. Xing Yimou finally understood why Long Chen was able to break through so quickly on the longboat. It was most likely because of the Chaos Dragon Bone. He knew about the Chaos Dragon Bone. It was indeed scattered in the universe, but it was extremely difficult to obtain it. Once the various Chaos Divine tribes obtained it, they would not easily appear. The astral wings' golden light slowly receded, and they returned to their human form. However, there was still a huge bloody hole on their body. The purple light above the bloody hole did not dissipate, as if it could devour him at any time. He looked at Long Chen with a complicated gaze. He had been trapped in the demonic abyss for countless years. He never thought that he would meet someone as difficult to deal with as Long Chen as soon as he walked out. "I agree to help you find the Chaos Dragon Bone, but I will not go with you." Xing Yimou stared at Long Chen and said, "If you agree, I will tell you where the Chaos Dragon Bone is. After that, everything will have nothing to do with me." Long Chen snorted and replied, "If you just tell me a few places, how can I find you again once we are separated?" Long Chen did not believe Xing Yimou at all. According to his speculations, the reason why the astral wings appeared in the demonic abyss was most likely because the Realm Lord had killed the star beasts here. Countless stars in the star ocean had been refined, and the power of the Devil Star had left behind many unique treasures and fortunes. These things were led here by the astral wings, but they were trapped here for various reasons. After so many years, the astral wings' power was less than 10%. Otherwise, how could they only be at this level? If he left today, the next time they met, the situation would be completely different. "You will know when you see." The star demon snorted coldly. Endless brilliance burst out from his eyes and shot into the starry sky before disappearing without a trace. The scene became silent. Long Chen and Xing Yimou looked at each other. Neither of them dared to relax. The two of them stood there like statues for more than 10 days. Buzz. Astral Wings' eyes glowed with golden light. He grabbed the air with both hands, and an illusory star map appeared in his hands. The star atlas broke through the sky and fell towards Long Chen. Long Chen's halberd moved forward and emitted a vast purple light, trapping the star atlas. He could see all the patterns on the star atlas. His eyes suddenly flickered with a tangible light. Xing Yimou retreated into the distance and said coldly, "This is the most I can do. If you don't believe me, we don't know who will live and who will die today." Long Chen looked deeply at Xing Yimou, but he didn't stop him from leaving. With a shake of his halberd, the purple light on Xing Yimou's body was drawn back. As the purple light dissipated, Xing Yimou took a deep look at Long Chen. It had to be said. In today's battle, the astral wings feared nothing more than Long Chen's halberd. The purple light had destroyed his body. Even if he used all his strength, he couldn't repair it at all. The astral wings disappeared into the horizon. Long Chen shattered the star atlas with a shake of his halberd. He had already memorized all the paths on the star atlas. When Kong Hen Shui and the others saw this, they flew out from the strange space 50,000 kilometers away and headed towards Long Chen. Zhu Zizhua looked at Long Chen and muttered, "Astral wings. Having him is like having all the opportunities in the world. It's a pity to let him go." Long Chen shook his head and laughed. Astral wings should be a rare treasure. However, his consciousness is no different from that of a human. I'm afraid we won't be able to bear the cost of keeping him here. Moreover, I only want the Chaos Dragon Bone. It's enough that he gave me the Star Atlas. After saying this, Long Chen didn't continue to explain. Instead, he said in a low voice, "We can't stay here for long. Now that the heavenly god Sky Devouring clan has left, news of the astral wings' reappearance will definitely spread throughout the primal chaos. Let's return to Void Scar Planet first. Along the way, we'll think of a way to spread the news of the astral wings again. We'll try our best not to get into trouble again." As everyone flew through the void, Kong Hen Shui smiled and said, "You're still alive after your battle with the astral wings. I'm afraid the heavenly god Sky Devouring clan will think that you've already suppressed them." Long Chen shook his head and smiled. He said calmly, "I helped him remove the purple light on his halberd. Of course, I didn't do it without a price. Along the way, all you need to do is split this aura into 100 portions and spread it out. Within 3 months, you'll be able to use this aura to track down the astral wings. That way, we'll be able to separate ourselves from the astral wings very quickly. Kong Hen Shui rolled his eyes at Long Chen. He felt that Long Chen was quite similar to the ancient sacred world lord of the past. Just this meticulous thought process alone was enough to tell a thing or two. For a human to be able to reach where he was today definitely wasn't due to luck alone. Luck and fortune were often accompanied by boundless danger. Under Kong Hen Shui's lead, everyone hurried back to Void Scar Planet as quickly as possible. Along the way, they also began to spread the news just as Long Chen had said. Just as expected. In just a little over 10 days, news of the astral wings' reappearance had spread like wildfire. In fact, some people had even seen them with their own eyes. Some members of the Primal Chaos Divine Tribe had even forced them to reveal their true form. Long Chen and the others were actually able to relax for a while. The entire Primal Chaos Star had been attracted to the astral wings like a wildfire. 1 month later, Kong Hen Shui led Long Chen and the others back to Void Scar Planet. They avoided all of the Primal Chaos Divine Tribe's forces as much as possible. Not long after they entered Void Scar Planet, streaks of divine light shot toward them from all directions. These people seemed to have sensed Kong Hen Shui's presence the moment he entered the Primal Chaos Divine Tribe's territory. Kong Hen Qing tore through space and leaped into Kong Hen Shui's soul as she muttered, "Thank you, big brother Long Chen, for helping Qing bring mother back." Long Chen couldn't help but reveal a smile on his face as he patted Kong Hen Qing's head. According to the lifespan of the Primal Chaos Divine Tribe, Kong Hen Qing was already 1,000 years old. However, in reality, she was only equivalent to a 17 or 18-year-old girl. A long lifespan might be one of the innate talents of the Primal Chaos Divine Tribe. Before Long Chen could say anything, Kong Hen Qing looked at Kong Hen Shui with a hopeful expression and said, "Mother, can Qing marry big brother Long Chen when I become a god king in a few hundred years?" When these words were spoken, Long Chen's hand froze in midair. His smile also froze on his face. In Long Chen's mind, the Realm Master's remnant soul snorted coldly. His face gradually turned ashen as he transmitted a voice transmission, "Kid, you better give up on this thought. Otherwise, Master will not forgive you." Qing Xian glared at Long Chen fiercely. A hint of jealousy appeared on his face. Long Chen felt helpless when he sensed everyone's gaze. He could only smile bitterly. Kong Hen Qing was the Realm Master's daughter. He had always treated her as family. When had he ever had such thoughts? Humph. Chapter 1280. The gazes of the Empyrean god Void Scar caused Long Chen's group to come to an abrupt halt. Kong Hen Shui also sensed that something was amiss. Only now did she realize that the person to the left of the leader was Kong Hen Luyun's father and 2 brothers. Wintry Moon's cold gaze swept past Kong Hen Shui as he said in a frosty voice, "Kong Hen Tabo witnessed it with his own eyes. Long Chen took my son's Magatama away from our clan. My son led 10,000 god emperors to rescue Kong Hen Shui. In the end, he even left with you. However, his soul tablet has already shattered." As he spoke, killing intent began to radiate from his body. His intentions were clear. Kong Hen Luyun had left with Long Chen because of his Magatama. However, his death was definitely related to Long Chen. Kong Hen Shui's expression instantly darkened. Even though she was only a divine soul, the spatial energy around her was still surging violently. Kong Hen Luyun was a greedy wolf. If Long Chen hadn't intervened, I might have already died at his hands. Her words caused the leader of the Empyrean god Void Scar's group to frown. Kong Hen Shui and Kong Hen Qing had a special status in the clan due to their relationship with the Realm Lord. This was especially true for Kong Hen Qing. As the daughter of the Realm Lord, she possessed unfathomable power. If Kong Hen Luyun really wanted to kill Kong Hen Shui, then he deserved to die. Wintry Moon immediately roared, "He's already dead. Who can testify to your lies? Luyun risked his life to save you. Now, you're trying to frame him." Kong Hen Shui was about to step forward to explain, but Long Chen suddenly stopped him. Long Chen narrowed his eyes and snorted coldly. He looked at Wintry Moon and the two youths behind him who looked somewhat similar to Kong Hen Luyun. He said in a low voice, Kong Hen Luyun made an agreement with me. The Magatama will last for 3 years. Elder Kong Hen Tabo will testify to this. Am I right? Even Kong Hen Tabo seemed a little helpless. However, he still nodded. Wintry Moon was about to speak again, but Long Chen immediately roared, 3 years haven't passed yet. He tried to kill me because of the Magatama. Why can't I kill him? Why not? Long Chen's voice was like rolling thunder. For a moment, everyone did not know what to do. He stared at Kong Hen Hanyu and said coldly, are you saying that your son can violate the agreement and kill me, and even attack Kong Hen Shui, but I cannot kill him? Is that what you mean? Cold Moonstreak's face alternated between green and red. The surrounding clansmen also began to discuss among themselves. Enough, all of you shut up. The leader of the Void Scar clan finally spoke. His expression was also very ugly, and his body emitted a terrifying pressure. The people around him immediately quieted down. The matter with Kong Hen and Luyun has come to an end. After all, Long Chen has done our clan a favor. You all should bring Kong Hen Shui to the inner hall to stay. Kong Hen Su was clearly unwilling to let this matter continue. Everyone knew that Void Scar and Flowing Cloud's deaths could not be blamed on anyone else. There was no need for Kong Hen Shui to slander him. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Kong Hen Shui led Long Chen and the others to the various palaces where the Void Scar clan resided. Kong Hen Su remained where he was and walked towards Kong Hen Hanyu and his sons. He sighed and said, Kong Hen Luyun's talent is indeed extremely outstanding in our clan. However, you should know his personality better than anyone else. The matter between him and Long Chen has come to an end. From now on, your sons will receive double the resources they need in the clan. As the clan leader of the Void Scar clan, Kong Hen Su clearly did not wish for Kong Hen Hanyu to become enemies with Kong Hen Shui and the others because of Kong Hen Luyun. On the other hand, he could also sense that Long Chen was extraordinary. The fact that Long Chen was able to rescue Kong Hen Shui from the Star Prison and even kill Kong Hen Luyun in the demonic abyss in the Star Ocean was proof of his strength. Cold Moonstreak sucked in a deep breath of cold air. The killing intent in his eyes gradually faded. After a short while, he said, let's not talk about my sons for now. Do you still remember the news of the heavenly god Sky-devouring clan that we killed a few days ago? The astral wings fell into Long Chen's hands. After a battle with him, they went missing. Kong Hen Su pondered for a moment before nodding. Over the past few days, he had heard quite a bit about the astral wings. In fact, it was rumored that some people had even seen the astral wings' true form. The astral wings were a matter of great importance. Even though they were not in Long Chen's hands, they could not afford to be careless. Leave this matter to Tabo Hen. Don't get involved. Cold Moonstreak did not say anything else. He turned around and led everyone away. Cold Moonstreak and his two sons remained rooted to the spot. Father, does the clan leader want us to stop causing trouble for Long Chen? Big brother died for nothing. Second brother, we can't let this matter rest. Since he chose to stay in our clan, we have to avenge Big Brother no matter the price. Cold Moonstreak's face turned ashen. We only have one chance to act. Otherwise, the clan leader won't let us off. If he dies, the clan leader won't suppress us for an outsider. Under Kong Hen Shui's lead, Long Chen and the others arrived at a large hall. The interior of the hall was luxuriously decorated, and everyone gathered in the courtyard. Kong Hen Shui said to Long Chen, Cold Moonstreak's personality is similar to Cold Moonstreak's. He won't let this matter rest. Try not to leave this palace for the next few days. Don't underestimate this family. Long Chen nodded his head nonchalantly. Chapter 1281. At the heavenly god Sky-devouring clan. Tun Gumo led over 1,000 people back to the clan. However, they were intercepted by the Void Scar planet. The person leading them was Void Scar planet. Now, his status in the clan had plummeted. Even his father had been stripped of his position as an elder. Almost all of the 10,000 god emperors had died. In the end, only 300 or so people managed to enter the clan. Most importantly, Kong Hen Shui had already returned to the Void Scar planet. News of the astral wings had spread throughout the various primal chaos god clans. Yesterday, even the Heavenly God clan had personally come to the Devouring Goo planet. The Heavenly God clan had participated in the battle where the Realm Lord had fallen. Ever since the Realm Lord had fallen, they had been working hard to eliminate everything related to the Realm Lord. The Star Prison of the Heavenly God Sky Devouring clan was used to imprison anyone related to the Realm Lord. Only the higher-ups of the Heavenly God clan knew that the Star Prison's array formation had been modified by the Heavenly God clan. Once someone related to the Realm Lord entered, everything would gradually be taken away. As such, even if they wanted to kill Kong Hen Shui, they had to bring him back to the Star Prison. Tun Gumo and his father were currently living at the very edge of the Devouring Goo planet. The brilliance in his eyes brightened and dimmed. After a long while, he said guiltily to his silent father in front of him, "Father, if I didn't want to obtain the Star Demon wings, I wouldn't have made such a big mistake." Tun Gumo's father slowly opened his eyes. He stared at Tun Gumo. Suddenly, he slapped Tun Gumo and sent him flying dozens of meters. Tun Gumo had just climbed to his feet when he knelt on the ground. Tun Gumo's father shouted coldly, "Get back here." Tun Gumo didn't say anything. He hurriedly returned to his father's side. "Tell me, what did you do wrong?" Tun Gumo's father glared fiercely at Tun Gumo. Tun Gumo smiled bitterly and replied, "I've always been careful with my words and actions my whole life. I've never made a big mistake. I'm also afraid of tarnishing my father's reputation in the clan, so I've always done things meticulously." But this time, his mind was covered by the astral wings. He went against his own principles and led his people to take risks. In the end, he didn't achieve anything and even caused father to fall into such a state. "Humph!" Tun Gumo's father snorted and glared at Tun Gumo. "What wrong is this? I just can't stand your inflexible attitude. Isn't it just the death of 10,000 god kings? My Heavenly God Sky Devouring had once fought against the other primal chaos divine clans for dozens of years for the sake of a star beast's core, but we ended up with nothing in the end. The ancient Saint World Lord has countless legendary figures, and he has countless treasures and divine arts. Could it be that they all fell from the sky?" Tun Gumo was completely stunned. The dim light in his eyes disappeared as he murmured, "Father doesn't blame me. You did the right thing. The opportunity was right in front of you. If you didn't dare to fight for it, sooner or later, you would have died more miserably than anyone else. You led 10,000 people into the demonic abyss in the astral sea and took the initiative. The reason you ended up like this is because you didn't do enough to fight for the opportunity. Why can't you see what Longchen saw?" Tun Gumo suddenly stood up. His eyes were unprecedentedly bright. The decline that had been caused by the demonic abyss in the astral sea was swept away. He bowed deeply to his father and finally said in a low voice, "Father, I just remembered something. I want to leave planet Tun Gumo and make a trip to the demonic abyss in the astral sea. Go, go. Leave behind a wisp of your soul. If you die, I'll take care of your corpse." After Tun Gumo left planet Tun Gumo, the Heavenly God race ordered the Heavenly God Sky Devouring to activate the Star Prison to kill the other two people related to the World Lord. More than 10 days passed. On planet Void Scar, Elder Su and Kong Hen Shui's bodies had already been reconstructed. At their cultivation level, as long as their souls were not destroyed, using external forces to reconstruct their bodies would greatly affect their cultivation. Both Elder Su and Kong Hen Shui's cultivation levels had dropped by a total of 4 levels. Longchen, Qin Xian, and Jian Shursan had already made preparations to leave planet Void Scar. Zhu Zizhua had originally planned to stay on planet Void Scar with Elder Su. However, because of Zhu Ziyin, he had no choice but to follow Longchen. Zhu Ziyin, the descendant of the heavenly destruction god and the human race, seemed to have a special feeling for Longchen. This feeling gave Zhu Zizhua a headache. During this period of time, he had become very familiar with Long Chen. However, the more familiar they were, the more he realized that Long Chen was a troublesome person. His identity as the successor of the World Lord meant that his path was destined to be full of thorns. If they continued to follow Long Chen, it would be far too risky. For example, right now, Long Chen's first stop was to visit the heavenly devouring god's bloodline again. After that, he would think of a way to rescue the other two people trapped in the star prison. This time, he did not have the Sky Magatama. Moreover, after what had happened last time, the heavenly devouring god's bloodline would definitely guard the star prison tightly. It would be extremely difficult to enter and rescue the other two people. Of course, these were all Zhu Zixua's own thoughts. However, Zhu Ziyin did not care at all. A grandfather would never be able to persuade a grandson. Long Chen, Qing Xian, Jian Shan, and Zhu Zixua planned to leave planet Void Scar in the middle of the night. Why did they choose to leave at night? Naturally, it was because of Kong Han Hanyue and his family. Long Chen listened to Kong Han Shue's advice and tried his best to avoid fighting with the three of them. However, things were not as simple as they had imagined. They had just left Kong Han Shue's palace when they were stopped by dozens of god emperors from the heavenly devouring god's bloodline. The person leading the group was none other than Kong Han Hanyue. He stared at Long Chen and the others and sneered, "My clan is indebted to all of you. It has only been a few days, and you want to leave? Aren't you not giving my heavenly devouring god's bloodline any face?" Long Chen frowned and stared deeply at Kong Han Hanyue. "Could it be that you want to take revenge for Kong Han Luyan now? If that's the case, I'm afraid you're not strong enough." Long Chen's words stunned Kong Han Hanyue and the others. A strange expression appeared on their faces. Long Chen's cultivation was merely at the fifth order God Emperor realm. Wasn't his words a little too arrogant? Kong Han Hanyue threw his head back and roared with laughter. "I really don't understand what kind of trajectory you used to kill my son. How can someone like you defeat my son? I didn't stop you today because I want to attack you. I was ordered to ask you to stay for another 5 days." The frown on Long Chen's face deepened. In the end, he shook his head helplessly. It seemed like no matter what, he and Kong Han Hanyue's family would not be reconciled. Chapter 1282. Hollow Scar Tabo had been used by the heavenly space god to restrain Hollow Scar Hanyue, so Long Chen and the others hadn't been harassed by Hollow Scar Hanyue and the others during this period of time. Now that they were about to leave the Void Scar planet, Long Chen and the others couldn't understand why he was standing on Cold Moon's side. Long Chen took a deep breath and nodded in the end. Since Void Scar Tabo had spoken, it was equivalent to the heavenly space god's decision. If they still wanted to leave, they would most likely cause a lot of trouble. In fact, they might even implicate Kong Han Shui. "Since you all have good intentions, why can't we stay for a few more days?" Long Chen said before leading Jian Shan and the others back toward the Void Scar planet. Cold Moon looked at the backs of Long Chen and the others and sneered, "When that day comes, I want to see just how strong you are. How dare you speak such arrogant words?" Void Scar Tabo couldn't help but shake his head at the sight of Cold Moon's murderous intent. This is the greatest concession that the heavenly space god can make. After the event, Long Chen and the others will die. You'll have to hand over all the information you have on the heavenly space god as well. On the other side, Long Chen and the others returned to the back of the palace. Zhu Zixua and the others' faces were ashen. Elder Su said in a low voice, "He actually invited you to stay in the name of a grand event." "Why? Grand event? The heavenly space god wants you to stay for the grand event." Just as everyone was discussing among themselves, Kong Han Shui walked in through the door. A look of astonishment appeared on her face when she heard everyone's words. Then, her expression darkened. Long Chen and the others immediately turned to Kong Han Shui. They weren't familiar with the heavenly space god's bloodline. They knew nothing about this so-called grand event. Since it was being held in the heavenly space god's bloodline, it wasn't just for them. What kind of killing intent could there be? When Kong Han Shui saw that no one understood the gravity of the situation, he said in a low voice, "The Void Scar Conference is held for the members of my race. It is held once every 20 years, and every participant is the person with the strongest space-time talent in our race. This grand event was established by the strongest cultivators of our clan. It is an alternate space that has evolved out of thin air. There are spatial turbulences everywhere. These things may not be much to the people of our clan, but to outsiders, it is absolutely a land of death. Any one of them would be enough to shatter your physical bodies, and even your souls would be in danger." Kong Inshua's words made the faces of Elder Su, Zhu Zizhua, and the others turn ashen. They knew just how terrifying the heavenly space god's innate talents were. A space that was completely filled with spatial turbulence was definitely a threat to their lives. Not only that, Cold Moon Void Scar was filled with murderous intent toward them. It was likely that this event would be far more dangerous than they had anticipated. Longchen took in a deep breath of turbid air and frowned. Spatial power was the most powerful innate ability of the heavenly space god, and even he didn't dare to underestimate it. However, he also knew that they had no choice. There was no way out of this predicament. After all, Freezing Moon wasn't the only enemy they had to face. Since the heavenly space god had personally authorized this event, there was no way they could leave the Void Scar planet. It was impossible for anyone to escape from the Void Scar planet, where the heavenly space god's bloodline resided. The heavenly space god's innate talents were extremely powerful, as evidenced by the fact that Cold Moon Void Scar and Flowing Cloud had led their clansmen to attack the heavenly space god's heavenly space god. Now that things have gotten to this point, we have to figure out everything about the Void Scar province within 5 days. Longchen said to Kong Inshua with a grave expression. Kong Inshua couldn't help but shake his head upon hearing this. Every single strand of spatial power in this alternate space has been refined by the higher-ups of our clan. You won't be able to use any spatial power at all, so you'll most likely die. After saying this, she didn't even bother to listen to Long Chen's reply. Instead, she tossed a jade slip to Long Chen before walking away without even looking back. "I'll go find the Heavenly Space God's clan and ask the Heavenly Space God about this. Outsiders have never participated in this grand event before." An hour passed by. Kong Inshua returned angrily. Everyone couldn't help but smile bitterly upon seeing this. There was no need to ask. Kong Inshua probably didn't even get to see the Heavenly Space God's clan leader. After calming down for a moment, Kong Inshua finally accepted reality. All he could do was come up with a plan to help Long Chen and the others survive this ordeal. Time slowly passed by. On the 5th day, everyone could already hear the commotion outside the palace. Long Chen instructed in a low voice, "Remember what I told you. This is the only way we can leave this grand event safely." Just as everyone was speaking, they heard a report from outside the palace. Kong Inshua was still a little disgruntled by this. When she pushed open the door and saw that the person who had come was Kong Hanhanua's son, she became even more furious. However, before she could vent her anger, Kong Inshua's eyes narrowed slightly as a playful smile appeared on his face. "The grand event is about to begin. You don't have anything else to do, do you? The location of the grand event is a little remote, so I've brought people to pick you up. Please don't overthink this." Creak. As soon as Kong Inshua finished speaking, his entire body trembled as he blasted open the doors on both sides of the palace. There were nearly 200 clansmen of Empyrean God Void Scar standing behind him. He was clearly afraid that Kong Inshua would escape with Long Chen and the others. Zhu Zizhua and the others had ugly expressions on their faces. However, before they could open their mouths, Long Chen stopped them. "Since you're here to lead the way, why don't you lead the way?" Kong Inshua snorted coldly upon hearing this. He sneered and gestured for them to leave. After leaving the palace, everyone flew in a straight line towards the other side of Void Scar Planet. Kong Inshua's words weren't completely false. The location of the grand event was indeed a little remote. They were practically in a desolate area. Only when they saw 5 towering blue stone pillars did they see many figures streaking across the sky like shooting stars. The towering blue stone pillars seemed to be formed from some sort of strange ore. Every single stone pillar was separated by hundreds of thousands of kilometers. It was an incomparably majestic sight. At the center of the stone pillars was an enormous basin. It was as if this basin was being held in the palm of 5 massive blue fingers. Kong Inshua furrowed his brows upon seeing this. Void Scar Pillar? Why is the grand event being held here? Kong Inshua sneered at Kong Inshua. The location of the grand event is a matter for our clansmen to decide. You haven't considered yourself a member of the heavenly space god's bloodline, so it's only natural that you don't know. Chapter 1283. The 5 azure stone pillars were like giant hands that supported the heavens, and the ground beneath them was sunken into the earth. Before anyone could get close, they could feel a spatial storm erupting from beneath them. It was as if a sharp blade was stabbing into their faces. There were several dozen people standing on top of each of the 5 stone pillars with their hands clasped behind their backs. The leader of the group seemed to be an illusion, and his gaze was fixed on every corner of the plaza. The heavenly god Void Scar's current patriarch and several elders were standing on top of the central stone pillar. Void Scar Luyun's father, Void Scar Hanua, was among them. In fact, he was only a few meters away from the patriarch. The Void Scar clan's patriarch stared at Long Chen and the others as he muttered, "You should know why I'm keeping you here. I've already made a huge concession." Void Scar Hanua nodded and said in a solemn voice, "Whether or not Long Chen dies today, I won't pursue this matter any further." Even though he said those words, there was a hint of playfulness in the depths of his eyes. He knew that Long Chen was going to die today without a doubt. For this matter, he had threatened the patriarch of his clan. If he couldn't kill Long Chen, what was the point of doing so? The relationship between the heavenly god of midnight and the heavenly god of space had always been a thorn in the side of the heavenly god of space. The information he had on the heavenly god of midnight was naturally a bargaining chip. More and more people gathered at the edge of the basin surrounded by the 5 stone pillars. Most of them were 4th order to 6th order god emperors, and close to half of them were 5th order god emperors. Have you heard? If you can enter the top 10, not only will you be able to choose any item from the Void Scar Pagoda, but you will also be able to obtain Void Scar Luyun's wings. Void Scar Luyun's talent in spacetime was second only to Void Scar Qing. He died an unnatural death this time, and the clan used his blood essence to summon back the power of the wings. What a big deal! Have you heard? It's said that there are outsiders participating in our grand ceremony, and it seems like they are the ones who killed Void Scar Luyun. Isn't that person there? Can't you see from the spatial fluctuations that the strongest among them is only a 6th order god emperor? How can they kill Void Scar Luyun? They must have used some tricks. Participating in our clan's grand ceremony? I'm afraid only death awaits this group of outsiders. Just as Long Chen and the others entered the arena under Kong Hen Su's lead, an incomparably noisy discussion rang out from all directions. Void Scar Flowing Cloud's status in the clan was not low. His death was big news to everyone. Of course, there was also a group of people who wanted to kill Long Chen. They were even shouting that they would take revenge for Void Streak and Flowing Cloud. In the end, Long Chen and the others also stopped at the edge of the basin, and the heavenly space god beings around them seemed to have instinctively distanced themselves from them. The eyes of the people nearby were not filled with fear, but with disdain and disgust. Only Kong Inshua and Kong Henqing walked beside Long Chen. Along the way, Kong Henshua's expression did not look good. Long Chen had risked his life to rescue her from the star prison, but in the end, he had mistakenly entered the demonic abyss in the Star Sea. Now, she had returned alive. However, Long Chen was being pushed to his death by the heavenly space god, and she felt extremely guilty. Dong dong dong. Everyone seemed to be waiting for Kong Hengsu to arrive with Long Chen and the others. They had only been standing there for a dozen or so breaths when the space above the basin began to rumble, as if a massive drum had been struck. This sound continued for a long time, and it was as if the space itself was rippling with waves. Roar! Before the drumbeats had even died away, deafening cheers erupted from the countless heavenly space god cultivators around the basin. All of them seemed to be extremely excited. Amidst everyone's cheers, Longchen turned around to look at Kong Henshui. Qing Xian and Zhu Ziyin have nothing to do with this matter. Just wait here with them. Just as Kong Henshui was about to nod in agreement, Kong Hengsu's body flashed and he appeared in front of Longchen and the others. A cold light flashed through his eyes as he stared at Qing Xian and Zhu Ziyin. He then turned to Longchen and chuckled coldly. "You're not giving our clan any face at all. Since they're here, how can they be exempted from this?" Kong Henshui was completely enraged upon seeing this. Powerful spatial power erupted from her body as she glared at Kong Hengsu. "You've gone too far." Kong Hengsu's expression shifted as his aura surged violently. Even though his cultivation base was far superior to Kong Henshui's, his mastery of spatial power was still far inferior to Kong Henshui's. He glared at Kong Henshui and roared, "You don't have the right to make this decision." Swish! Just as he finished speaking, he felt a chill run down his spine. Space and time instantly enveloped his body as he tried to redirect this attack into another space. However, he was still too slow. To put it more accurately, Longchen was simply too fast. Perhaps it was because Kong Hengsu didn't want to give Longchen any chance to escape, so he had remained extremely close to him this entire time. Now, in order to stop Kong Henshui and Qing Xian, he was only 3 meters away from Longchen. At such a close distance, he had clearly underestimated Longchen's power. Rumble! A hand instantly pierced through Kong Hengsu's chest, and nearly half of his body was pulverized into dust. Bam! A massive shockwave surged out from the ground, and it was as if an earthquake had occurred. Longchen had actually nailed Kong Hengsu to the ground with a single kick. Before anyone could react, Longchen's cold voice rang out. "Don't be so shameless," one had to admit it. Even Kong Henshui was stunned by this scene. She didn't think that Longchen would attack Kong Hengsu in front of all the heavenly space god. What's wrong with this guy? He actually dares to attack Kong Hengsu here. Brother, can't you see the main point? This human is only at the 5th stage of the Divine Emperor realm, but Kong Hengsu is a 6th stage Divine Emperor. He suppressed Kong Hengsu with a single strike. There's something wrong with this guy. The voices from all directions almost instantly changed from the cheers just now to discussions about Longchen. At the same time, Kong Hengsu's subordinates instantly surrounded Longchen and the others. On the blue stone pillar in the center, Cold Moon Hollow's face froze. His body even began to tremble with rage. Just as he was about to speak, the patriarch beside him shouted, "Do you want to lose another son?" As the two of them spoke, Longchen turned around as if he had sensed something. He stared at Kong Henshui with a deep and cold gaze. Chapter 1284. Longchen's sudden attack stunned everyone present. No one had expected him to attack at a time like this. Half of Kong Hengsu's body had already been reduced to dust, and he was gasping for breath after breath. However, he didn't dare to retaliate in the slightest. He could sense the killing intent radiating from Longchen's body, and he knew that the slightest carelessness would spell certain doom for him. The situation had reached a stalemate, and Kong Hengsu's followers had already surrounded Longchen. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Before they had even attacked, the leader of the heavenly Scar God bloodline arrived with a few elders from the blue pillar of light at the center. It was as if they had teleported through space, and when they appeared again, they were only half a meter away from Longchen. "Let him go, and I'll agree to your request," the leader of the heavenly space god bloodline said in a calm voice. Kong Henhui's face darkened as he looked at Kong Hengsu, who was under Longchen's feet. Longchen swept his gaze across the two of them, and he didn't say anything. He kicked Kong Hengsu over 10 meters away. He then cupped his fists toward the leader of the heavenly space god bloodline. "I'll have to trouble you with this, senior." The old man took a deep look at Longchen before nodding and not saying anything. Longchen had suddenly attacked so that Qing Xian and Zhu Ziyin could avoid this event. This was far too dangerous for the two of them. Secondly, they weren't the only ones participating in this event. There were many other heavenly space god bloodline cultivators, and if they didn't display some of their strength, they would most likely be targeted and killed. He had defeated Kong Hen Su with a single strike to show everyone that they weren't weak. They weren't pushovers that could be easily bullied. Kong Hen Su rose to his feet before everyone's eyes, and his face was completely ashen as he used his divine power to rapidly regenerate his physical body. He glared viciously at Long Chen before saying in a cold voice, "Once we get inside, I'll settle this with you. I'll be waiting." Long Chen chuckled coldly. The leader of the heavenly space god bloodline furrowed his brows. "Enough. Get ready for the event." As he spoke, he waved his hand and an invisible ray of light fell into the basin. The basin, which was hundreds of thousands of miles in circumference, was instantly filled with surging winds and clouds. Countless illusory rays of light rose and fell one after another, and the scenery within was actually distorted. Swoosh! Swoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, people rushed into the basin from all directions. Long Chen and the others turned around and nodded at Kong Han Shui. Then, they led the Jianshi San Elder Su and the others into the basin. The purpose of this event was to test the heavenly space god's disciples' mastery of spatial power. The rules were quite simple, and that was to obtain as many blue beads as possible. These beads weren't anything precious, but they were imprinted with the Patriarch's divine sense. However, those who were able to obtain the top 10 beads would be given the opportunity to enter the clan's treasure house and choose any item they wished. This time, however, there was an additional item. The first place winner would receive Void Scar and Flowing Clouds and 8 wings. This was an unimaginable temptation to all heavenly god of space and time. Void Scar and Flowing Clouds' status in the clan was quite high because of this pair of wings. They allowed him to possess spatial power far surpassing his peers. As soon as Long Chen and the others entered the basin, they disappeared without a trace. At this moment, Kong Hen Su's physical body had already fully recovered. Even though his face was a little pale, he still walked forward and was about to enter the basin. Seeing this, Cold Moon stepped forward and stopped him. "I've already made arrangements for this matter. Your brother is also among them. You don't need to go in." Cold Moon was still feeling a little fearful after witnessing Kong Hen Su being suppressed by Long Chen. He had a total of 3 sons. Kong Hen Luyun had already died, and he really didn't want to see Kong Hen Su risk his life. However, Kong Hen Su couldn't swallow his anger no matter what. "Father, don't worry. Even though that person's combat strength is a little ridiculous, he's still a 5th-order God Emperor. It's one thing if he fights me in the outside world, but it's almost impossible for him to defeat me once he enters the basin." As soon as he finished speaking, surprisingly, Kong Hengsu had brought 1 or 2 of his trusted subordinates into the basin. The Patriarch shook his head and led everyone back to the Pillar of Light. On the other side, all of the members of the heavenly space god's bloodline had already entered the basin. Winds and clouds surged within the basin, and many parts of it intersected with each other like shattered mirrors. As soon as Long Chen and the others entered the basin, they understood what Kong Han Shui was talking about. The level of danger here was far beyond their imagination. As soon as Sword 13 entered this place, he almost hesitated, causing his body to be cut into 2 halves. If it weren't for the fact that he could transform into a sword soul, half of his soul would have been sliced in half. Zhu Zizhua and Elder Su were also injured. The distorted space here was like a divine weapon, and the slightest carelessness would result in eternal damnation. They were only a few meters away from each other, and none of them dared to move. Swish swish swish. At the same time, many of the members of the heavenly space god's bloodline were completely different from them. These people could travel through any space with ease, and it was as if the distorted space wasn't as dangerous to them as they had imagined. However, the scene of Long Chen suppressing Kong Hen Su was indeed somewhat effective. Even though these people were passing through the space around them, they were only on high alert and didn't attack them. Zhu Zizhua was the first to speak. "Seeing as Kong Hen Su and the others have already entered, I'm afraid they'll attack us soon," Jianshi San replied. "What we need to do is leave this place alive. There's no need for us to fight for that so-called bead. Rather than take the risk, it's much safer to wait here." Jianshi San's words were quite reasonable. Longchen nodded. The space here is only about 10 meters long and wide. Even though it's a little narrow, it's just as 13 said. Staying here is far safer than traveling through space to other places. Traveling hundreds of thousands of kilometers was nothing to them at their current cultivation bases. If they were in the outside world, they would be able to easily travel through space. However, the situation here was completely different. Even though they could use their cultivation bases to slice open space for a short period of time, it was extremely likely that they would be sliced to shreds if they encountered another spatial barrier. This seemingly helpless action was actually something they had discussed with Kong Hen Shui over the past 5 days. This was the only thing they could do. In terms of cultivation bases and combat prowess, perhaps they weren't much weaker than the others. However, in terms of spatial power, they were no match for any of the members of the heavenly space god's bloodline. Meanwhile, Kong Hen Su and another group of people were quickly searching for Long Chen and the others. Chapter 1285. All of the high-ranking members of the Heavenly Space God clan, as well as all of the spectators around the basin, turned toward Long Chen and the others in unison. The space within the basin was like a shattered mirror that had been sliced into countless pieces. Even an attack from the outside world wouldn't be able to reach this place, let alone send a message into it. Cold Moon Void chuckled coldly at the sight of Long Chen and the others standing there like mice. The elders beside him shook their heads and chuckled. I'm afraid that even the other chaotic divine tribe members would be in grave danger if they were to enter this place. This is their only option. It wouldn't be such a big deal if that was all. Haven't you noticed? After entering this place, Kong Hen Su has already guessed your approximate location. Even though he's slightly off track due to the spatial distortion, for hours have already passed. At most, he'll be able to find where Long Chen and the others are hiding in a short while. Kong Hen Luyun's aptitude can be considered to be among the best in our race. If he really was killed by that person, then he deserved to die. Cold Moon Void felt a lot better upon hearing everyone's discussion. He couldn't help but feel that Kong Hen Su's decision to enter this place wasn't a bad thing after all. Perhaps they didn't even need to send another team. Kong Hen Su and the others were more than enough to take care of Long Chen. Just as Kong Hen Su had said, this place wasn't the outside world. Long Chen and the others were nothing more than meat on a chopping block. Sure enough. It didn't take long for Kong Hen Su and the others to discover where Long Chen and the others were. At this moment, there were already a dozen or so members of the Heavenly Space God clan beside Kong Hen Su. A thin man behind Kong Hen Su said in a solemn voice, "There's no mistaking it. They're hiding here." As he spoke, his hands seemed to tear open the space before him. Light flashed, and the figures of Long Chen and the others appeared before him. At the same time, Long Chen's eyes immediately looked in their direction. They're here. Even though Jian San and the others couldn't sense anything, they knew that Long Chen's words couldn't be wrong. Everyone was instantly on guard. According to Kong Hen Shui, this place was filled with danger for them. Even if they were discovered, they couldn't rashly escape. Otherwise, they would only fall into chaos. Swoosh! Swoosh! Just as they were on high alert, they saw countless rays of light breaking through the void from all directions. In the blink of an eye, the violent energy filled the space where Long Chen and the others were. After the scene appeared, the people in the outside world stared at Long Chen almost at the same time. Rumble! A deafening sound rippled out from within. Under everyone's gaze, Long Chen and the others were like turtles in a jar. Even if they were attacked, they could only take it head-on. The area within a dozen or so meters of Shifeng was practically filled with the attacks of Void Hengsu and the others. There was no way for Shifeng to dodge. The entire space had become a sealed cage, but the attacks of Kong Hengsu and the other heavenly space god cultivators were pouring into the cage at almost every moment. This battle was somewhat similar to the first battle that Long Chen had fought on Void Scar Planet. The only difference was that the opponent they were facing now was as if they were attacking from another space that had been separated from their surroundings. Poochie! Poochie! After nearly an hour, the attacks finally weakened a little. Long Chen and the others were covered in wounds, especially Zhu Zizhua and Elder Su. Even though their cultivation bases were at the 6th Order God Emperor realm, their bodies were still covered in terrifying wounds from the spatial attacks. Blood dripped from the corner of Long Chen's mouth, but there was an imperceptible glint in his eyes. At the same time, even though Jianshi San and the others appeared to be in a weakened state, the divine light around their bodies remained concealed, as if they were waiting for something. Their feeble appearances were clearly captured by the outside world. This battle seemed to be the first one since the start of the pageant. Cold Moon couldn't help but roar with laughter when he saw the sorry state that Long Chen and the others were in. It was as if he could already see Long Chen being tortured to death by 1,000 cuts. The higher-ups on the blue pillars of light shook their heads and chuckled. I have to say, Cold Moon Void is using the name of the pageant to force Long Chen and the others to come here. This is practically an execution. Since the Patriarch agreed to this, he probably agreed to avenge Cold Moon Void. If this continues for a few more rounds, I'm afraid that even their souls will be destroyed. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Long Chen suddenly spoke. His voice was like thunder as it pierced through the space and reverberated outwards. Cold Moon Void, is this all you've got? It was much easier for me to kill Cold Moon Void back then. Long Chen's voice resounded in the air, and Cold Moon Void, who was standing beside him, was instantly enraged. He had been trampled on by Long Chen in front of all his clansmen, and he had already lost all his face. In his eyes, Long Chen and the others were already dead. Yet, Long Chen still dared to mention Cold Moon Void's name. How could he not be enraged? You're courting death. Cold Moon Void roared in rage. Space rippled in his hand, and the people around him attacked at the same time. Tyrannical attacks once again engulfed the space where Long Chen and the others were standing. Within a space of over 10 meters, Kong Hengsa led more than 10 people to attack simultaneously. One could easily imagine the scene. The entire space was gradually becoming riddled with holes. Boundless spatial power surged within the space, cutting through everything in its path like a sharp blade. Just as everyone thought that Long Chen and the others were dead for sure, the scene suddenly changed. Long Chen's voice suddenly resounded from within the space. Attack! This sudden voice seemed to have passed through the layers of distorted space, causing everyone to be stunned. In the blink of an eye, a devastating storm erupted from where he was standing. Rumble! The distorted space, which was originally more than 10 meters wide, collapsed in an instant, turning into nothingness. Long Chen and the others turned into shooting stars as they blasted to the side. At the same time, the surrounding space also began to distort due to the spatial fluctuations. Many of the people who had come with Cold Moon Void turned pale and spat out mouthfuls of blood. The spatial power around them had suffered a backlash. Cold Moon Void was no exception. His expression changed drastically, and before he could even react, he saw the space in front of him being pierced by a purple light. A speck of purple light pierced through the air, and the space around him shattered. The first thing to appear in the shattered space was a halberd. Following that, the space around the tip of the halberd was torn apart. Following that, Long Chen, Jianshi San, and the others launched a terrifying attack. All of them were God Emperors, and Zhu Zizhua and Elder Su were from the primal Chaos God tribe. Moreover, they had already reached the 6th Order God Emperor realm. When they attacked at the same time, one could imagine how powerful their attacks were. Chapter 1286. Long Chen's sudden attack stunned everyone present. He had borrowed the strength of Kong Hen Su and the others to shatter the space they were in. Kong Hen Su and the others' expressions changed drastically as they suffered the backlash of the spatial storm. Never in their wildest dreams would they have thought that Long Chen would make such a move. Long Chen's halberd pierced through the air like a divine weapon, tearing open a hole in space before Kong Hen Su and the others. The three of them were suffering from the most severe backlash, and they didn't even have the time to escape into space. Rumble! Long Chen and the others suppressed them to the ground amidst the booming sounds and resplendent light. Long Chen's halberd even smashed a 6th-stage God Emperor Realm Cultivator into pieces. Under everyone's watchful eyes, in the blink of an eye, Kong Hen Su and the others were suppressed by Long Chen. When the others saw this, they glanced at each other and hesitated for a moment before disappearing into the void. One of Kong Hen Su's group was killed, and the other 2 were captured. How could this be? Above the basin, Kong Hen Hanua staggered back several steps. Seeing that Kong Hen Su had fallen into Long Chen's hands once again, his face turned deathly pale. The surrounding elders also revealed shocked expressions. They did not expect that Long Chen and the others would be able to instantly suppress Kong Hen Su, the leader of the group, without even making a move for a long time. Long Chen's strength is unfathomable. He's clearly a 5th-order God Emperor, but he can suppress a 6th-order God Emperor with a single move. Did they use all their strength to protect themselves so that they could shatter the space around them and launch a counterattack? Among the 4 of them, Long Chen's cultivation doesn't seem to be the highest. However, his combat strength is the most terrifying. He actually managed to tear apart the space around Kong Hen Su with a single strike. The patriarch of the heavenly space god bloodline looked down at Long Chen and the others before saying, they were already prepared. Before they made their move, they had been observing the chaotic space around them. That last shout was to infuriate Kong Hen Su and force him to reveal his location. Everyone was enlightened when they heard this. If Kong Hen Su hadn't replied, even if Long Chen and the others had broken through space, they wouldn't have been able to instantly launch a counterattack, let alone capture Kong Hen Su. Between sighs, everyone couldn't help but look at Frozen Moon and sigh. Kong Hen Su had just escaped from Long Chen's hands. Yet, in the blink of an eye, he had fallen into Long Chen's hands again. It was likely that his life would be in danger. Kong Hen Hanua's face was as cold as ice. The joy on his face had long since disappeared. He glared at Long Chen and Kong Hen Su. Within the basin. Within the space of 7 to 8 meters, one person died a violent death. Kong Hen Su was once again stepped on by Long Chen, while the other person was restrained by Elder Su. Originally, the 3 people in front of him were not the only ones who attacked. After Kong Hen Su and the others were captured, they had no intention of continuing to attack Long Chen and the others. They had already fled into other spaces and left this place. Kong Hen Su's face was filled with unwillingness as Long Chen stepped on him. He had never imagined that he would be captured by Long Chen and the others in just an instant. Kill me if you want. Even if you kill me, I won't be able to leave this place alive. This place is where you will die. My second brother's team won't make the same mistake as me. Although Kong Hen Su's words were firm, it was clear that he regretted his actions today. He had thought that he could rely on the countless small spaces in this place to suppress Long Chen. He had never imagined that he would end up like this. Long Chen stared at Kong Hen Su. Then, as if his eyes had pierced through space, he looked at Kong Hen Hanua and said in a deep voice, "If the grudge between us ends here, Kong Hen Su will still be alive. We will leave planet Hen Su immediately." Everyone fell silent for a moment. His words were like sharp swords that pierced through the layers of space within the basin. Upon hearing this, the heavenly space god bloodline patriarch turned to look deeply at Frozen Moon before saying, "This is my promise to you. If you give up today, then Frozen Moon and drifting clouds matters will be forgotten." Kong Hen Hanua's entire body trembled violently upon hearing this, and his face turned from deathly pale to purple. He stared intently at Long Chen and the others. If he didn't agree to Long Chen's request now, then he would most likely die as well. He had already forced Long Chen and the others to participate in this event. This was already the tribe leader's greatest concession. If he gave up now, he would most likely never have a chance to attack again unless he left the heavenly space god tribe. Long Chen, you're definitely going to die today. However, if you let Kong Hen Su go, I can guarantee that everyone who follows you will live. Kong Hen Hanua was unwilling to give up. He only regretted that he hadn't stopped Kong Hen Su from entering the event. His choice was clear as his voice fell. Long Chen's expression turned frosty as he looked down at Kong Hen Su's body. When he withdrew his halberd, Kong Hen Su had already been pulverized along with his consciousness. Splat splat. Kong Hen Su died at Long Chen's hands before everyone's eyes. Atop the pillar of light, Kong Hen Hanyue threw up several mouthfuls of blood, and he almost collapsed to the ground. Another one of his sons had died at Long Chen's hands. I'm going to kill all of you here today. This is going to be your burial ground. Kong Hen Hanyue roared at the top of his lungs. His aura began to surge violently, and he looked like a madman. In that instant, all of the Heavenly Space God tribe members understood what was going on. The enmity between Long Chen and Kong Hen Hanyue's family had most likely reached an irreparable level. Many of the elders even stepped forward to speak to the tribe leader. They felt that it was inappropriate for an outsider to kill one of their own, and that they should suppress Long Chen and the others to seek justice for Kong Hen Hanyue. However, the Heavenly Space God tribe leader harumphed coldly and ordered everyone to back off. You have no right to comment on what's going on. This is all Kong Hen Hanyue's decision. I told him to give up a long time ago. Now that he's here, he has to swallow the bitter pill. Everyone didn't dare to say anything else. A few of the higher-ranking beings had already realized that Kong Hen Shui and Kong Hen Qing were the true culprits behind this. If it were anyone else, they would have been sentenced to death for killing Kong Hen Luyun. However, if Long Chen was killed, Kong Hen Shui and Kong Hen Qing most likely wouldn't just stand by and watch. The two of them were simply far too important to the Heavenly Space God tribe, especially Kong Hen Qing, who was the daughter of the Realm Lord. Furthermore, Kong Hen Hanyue should have never threatened the tribe leader to allow Long Chen and the others into the event. Chapter 1287. Kong Hen Hanyue had made his choice, and Kong Hen Su had died at the hands of Long Chen. Long Chen gripped his halberd and shook his head. He didn't regret killing Kong Hen Luyun in the slightest. He spoke again. I've given you one last chance today. You chose this path yourself. As soon as his voice fell, he turned around and nodded at Jian Shan and the others. All of them placed their hands on their bodies before bursts of peculiar light completely engulfed them. When the light dissipated, Long Chen and the others had all disappeared on the spot. The Heavenly Space God tribe searched the entire basin, but to no avail. An elder exclaimed in shock, "How could this be? How could they enter the void outside of these spatial rifts? They're not even members of our tribe." The basin, which was hundreds of thousands of kilometers in size, had been sliced into countless small spaces by the power of space. They were so deep that anyone who entered a small space would be able to see them clearly. There was only one possibility if someone left their line of sight. They were traveling through the void, but they hadn't stepped into any of the spatial rifts. Everyone scanned the shattered mirror-like spaces, but they couldn't find anything. Even though they didn't quite believe it, that was the only explanation they could think of. After all, the edges of the basin had been completely sealed off, so there was no way anyone who entered would be able to escape. Kong Hen Shui, Qing Xian, and the others heaved a collective sigh of relief upon seeing this. Everything was still going according to their plan. The Heavenly Space God tribe members quickly figured out why Long Chen was able to enter the void without stepping into any of the spatial rifts. It was the other member of the Heavenly Space God tribe who had traveled with Kong Hen Su. Only 2 of them had died. Long Chen and the others had most likely been able to enter the void with the assistance of the final member of the Heavenly Space God tribe. But why had they entered the void in the first place? Even with the Heavenly Space God's help, there was no way they could travel through the void for long periods of time. They won't live for long. Just like how he lured my son into opening his mouth, he's already exposed his location by causing such a huge commotion. Walking in the void, in this place where space is scattered, it's impossible to go far. Cold Moonstreak's hair was disheveled, and his blood-red eyes sent chills down everyone's spine. Everyone nodded in agreement. As far as the eye could see, a group of people was rushing through various narrow spaces like a torrent, rushing straight towards the place where Long Chen and the others had disappeared. Right now, Planet Void Scar was leading 300 people. His face was filled with killing intent, and there was even a hint of annoyance. Just as Freezing Moon had said, they had long since noticed the commotion caused by Long Chen's group. However, they had failed to save Kong Hensu in time. His personality was completely different from Kong Hengsu's. Cold Moon Scar had entrusted this task to him in order to ensure that nothing went wrong. He had already stepped into the field before Longchen had arrived. It could even be said that he was the first person to enter. Only after he had made all the necessary preparations did he unite with the other clansmen. He had never expected that Kong Hengsu would also enter the arena and find Longchen first. News of Kong Hengsu's death was like a bolt from the blue to him. In fact, he even felt that his plan had been a little unnecessary. If he had randomly found 7 or 8 clansmen to follow Kong Hengsu, perhaps this matter would have already been resolved. Perhaps Kong Hengsu wouldn't have died. However, all of these were just ifs. Third brother, I'll personally avenge you, and Big Brother Lu Yun. Planet Void Scar and the others continued to travel through space, sweeping through every inch of space. Don't worry, Planet Void Scar. These outsiders are so brazen, so we'll definitely make them beg for death. It's inconvenient for them to move around here, so we'll be able to force them out in an hour at most. More and more people began to follow behind them, but they had no intention of participating. Even though they were all members of the heavenly space god's bloodline and were a little angry at Longchen for killing one of their clansmen, they knew that this matter involved the higher-ups of their clansmen, so they definitely couldn't participate. Furthermore, in their eyes, Planet Void Scar's preparations were already foolproof. With 300 members of the heavenly space god's bloodline traveling together, they were practically invincible in this chaotic space. They were only following them to watch the show. Of course. Even so, there were still 70% of them who were focused on searching for more beads in the top 10. They didn't want to get involved in this mess at all. Less than an hour later, Longchen and the others appeared in a small space that was over 20 meters wide. Looking from outside the basin, it was as if they were standing within a prismatic glass shard. Thump! As soon as they appeared, they saw the heavenly space god's bloodline member collapse to the ground. Even though this person's aura was abnormal, he was still alive. In fact, there weren't even any external injuries on his body. It looked like carrying Longchen and the others through space for an hour was already their limit. Longchen and the others looked at each other and nodded slightly. All of them wore grave expressions on their faces. Meanwhile, as soon as they appeared, they felt a wave of spatial fluctuations sweep toward them like a tidal wave. How many people have come this time? Elder Su sucked in a deep breath and couldn't help but ask. Longchen looked into the distance and muttered, 300 people. Every single one of them is a 6th Order God Emperor. Their leader is Kong Han Lu Yun's other brother, around 300 people. Jianshi San and Zhu Zixue couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Zhu Zixue even said, my grandchildren are still waiting outside. Is your plan reliable? I don't want to die here. Let's think of a way to escape and ask Kong Han Shui and Kong Han Qing to take the risk and send us out of the Void Scar planet. Zhu Zixue's cultivation base was the highest among them. His battle prowess even surpassed Elder Su of the Heavenly Light God's bloodline. However, he was also the most afraid of death. He wasn't afraid of death because he was a coward. Rather, it was because he wanted to see his grandchildren grow up. Along the way, he and Longchen had taken far too many risks. Jianshi San seemed to be extremely disdainful of his words. He snorted coldly and turned around. Longchen couldn't help but chuckle bitterly when he saw this. We were forced to come here. Don't you think it's a little too late for you to escape? Once the heavenly space god's bloodline members make a move, we'll die faster than anyone else. Furthermore, these 300 people are already here. We don't have a chance to escape anymore. Zhu Zixue was about to bring up the matter of the Devil Star Dragon Bone, but when he heard that the 300 people had already arrived, he swallowed his words. Meanwhile, Chapter 1288. The 300 or so Space God Stage cultivators instantly unleashed unprecedented spatial power and charged toward Longchen and the others in the blink of an eye. Their terrifying power instantly crushed the space around Longchen and the others. this was simply an unparalleled combat strength. Long Chen and the others were completely powerless against the 300 heavenly space god stage cultivators. Furthermore, this was a place that had been specially created for them. Rumble. Long Chen and the others were instantly engulfed by the spatial power. Void Scarstar harumphed coldly before leading the 300 heavenly space god stage cultivators through the spatial barrier and instantly surrounded them. Let's see how you're going to survive today. Void Scarstar roared as he raised a hand to stop the people behind him from attacking. The chaotic spatial power gradually calmed down. However, an astonishing scene ensued. Long Chen and the others suddenly disappeared on the spot. Buzz buzz buzz. Before Void Scarstar and the others had a chance to react, they were surrounded by small, glass-like spaces that were rapidly closing in on them from all directions. Hundreds of small spaces began to sway in the void, releasing a frightening space force. Even Void Scarstar's heavenly space god stage cultivators' expressions changed drastically upon seeing this. They hurriedly fled into the void and toward the nearest space. Even so, there were still some people who were sliced to shreds by the spatial fluctuations. Outside the arena, the heavenly space god stage cultivators all looked at one another, unsure of what was going on. They had personally carved up the entire space within the basin, so it should have been extremely stable. Why was it suddenly converging toward Long Chen and the others? The heavenly space god stage clan leader's eyes flashed as he looked thoughtfully at the hundreds of fragments that were converging toward one another. He murmured to himself, "They've trapped my people in the void for so long in order to stabilize the space and restore it to its original state. These people really are something. Even though they were able to find the traces we left behind in the void, it's still quite impressive that they were able to restore so many fragments to their original state in such a short time." Everyone nodded and came to a sudden realization. If this place was still a fragmented space, Long Chen would find it difficult to move even a single step. Now that everyone had just attacked the surrounding space, because there was no formation to stop them, they were all moving closer to the center. Long Chen and the others also stopped in the void, not daring to move. At this moment, the space fragments around them were like pieces of sharp blades that were shattering and closing in on the center. If they were careless, they would be doomed eternally. Void Scarstar and the others were in the depths of this place, so it was even more dangerous to be around them. As such, they had no choice but to evade their attacks. If that was not the case, the 300 people would have discovered that Long Chen and the others were barely standing in the void with their divine power. Looks like we made the right bet again. If they really take the risk and continue to look for us, I'm afraid we'll die in this void squall. Zhu Zixue was already covered in cold sweat. Elder Su nodded, and his expression was extremely solemn. Qian Shan harumphed coldly. Out of the 300 people, only the Void Scar planet wants to avenge his family. Who else would risk their lives to explore the void right now? As he spoke, they could even see spatial barriers crisscrossing in the dark void. The Void Scar planet's group watched as more than 10 people were torn to shreds. The Void Scar planet's group immediately entered the nearest fragmented space. With so many fragmented space fragments gathered together, it was simply too dangerous to stand outside. Standing inside the fragmented space, they were much safer than Long Chen and the others. Rumble. Under the gazes of the people outside, a 1,000-meter-wide fragmented space gradually appeared where Long Chen and the others had been standing. A fragmented space like this was extremely rare in this place, which had been split into countless small spaces. After the fragmented space condensed. To everyone's surprise, Long Chen and the others appeared directly in the fragmented space that had just condensed. This scene stunned everyone outside the arena. Long Chen and the others were in the fragmented space, which meant that they were facing more dangers. Why had they appeared before Void Scar Planet's group? Although everyone was puzzled, they did not think too much about it. At this moment, the fragmented space had already condensed, and the Void Scar Planet's group appeared one after another. More than 300 people surrounded Long Chen's group of 4 almost instantly after they appeared. Void Scar Planet said coldly, "Is this all you've got?" It seems that I've overestimated you. So what if you can condense the fragmented space here? Longchen suddenly took a step forward, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Have you been to this basin before? He looked at Void Scar Planet and said calmly, if you've been here before, do you think that this place is different from before? Different? Void Scar Planet had rarely come to this place before. He looked around, but he did not find anything strange. Some of the rocks and trees were strangely intertwined because of the fragmented space. This kind of scene was not unusual in this place. Before he could say anything, he heard a few dozen people from the hundreds of people behind him realize that something was wrong. One of them even exclaimed, "What's going on with these 10-meter-tall stone mountains? There are no stone mountains here at all." As soon as he said this, everyone fell silent for a moment before nodding. Even Void Scar Planet came to a realization. They had just avoided the dangers of the fragmented space and escaped into different fragmented spaces. There were no stone mountains in these fragmented spaces. The several kilometers of space they were in right now was a fragmented space that had been pieced together. Why would there be stone mountains here? A sense of extreme unease instantly welled up in Void Scar Planet's heart. Outside, Cold Moon and the other high-ranking members of the Void Scar Planet all wore solemn expressions. After a short while, Cold Moon glared at Kong Hen Shui and roared, "This is our tribe's ancient spatial ceiling formation. How many lives are you going to sacrifice for this outsider?" Kong Hen Shui rumphed coldly when he sensed the questioning gazes of the high-ranking members of the Void Scar Planet. "You forced an outsider into our tribe's convention and then attacked him with hundreds of people. Is this what you call righteous? Since you allowed them to participate in the convention, who can you blame even if there are casualties?" Even though she said this, she had already discussed this with Long Chen. At most, this formation could only be used against Kong Hen and Lu Yun. As for the other heavenly space gods, Long Chen would give them a chance to leave. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Long Chen and the others shifted into a four-legged formation as divine light instantly burst forth from their bodies. Boom, crack, crack. All of the stone mountains within a radius of several kilometers began to crumble apart, revealing a series of black jade stone tablets inscribed with Tao patterns. Chapter 1289. Numerous arrays suddenly appeared in the air, causing everyone's expressions to change drastically, regardless of whether they were outside or inside the arena. They were not unfamiliar with this formation. It was something that belonged to Kong Hen Shui, and he had used it once or twice in the past. However, very few people managed to walk out of the formation alive. The people behind Void Scar Star started to feel fear. More and more of them started to distance themselves from Void Scar Star, begging Long Chen for mercy. Ancient spatial ceiling formation? This belongs to Kong Hen Shui. No wonder he wanted to condense the space here. Sir, please wait. Please spare our lives. We only helped Void Scar Star because of a momentary lapse in judgment. We are not willing to fight to the death with you. Please give us a chance to leave. More and more people started to speak. Long Chen did not intend to use this formation to suppress them. He said coldly, "Just retreat to the edge of the formation. I will only activate this formation for 3 breaths." Everyone hurriedly nodded in agreement. Many people could only shake their heads and sigh as they looked at Void Scar Star. Since this formation had already been activated, the 300 of them would only be suppressed if they stayed here. In 3 breaths' time, the hundreds of people behind Void Scar Star had been reduced to less than 10 people. These people were obviously his trusted subordinates, and they did not intend to leave. Ha ha! Under everyone's watchful eyes, Void Scar Star did not seem worried at all. Instead, he started to laugh maniacally. He stared at Long Chen, his eyes shining brightly. "I thought that I would have been able to save Kong Hen Shui if I had been a little faster. Now, it seems that I was wrong. You planned so much. You probably made preparations beforehand. Even if you were attacked from all sides as soon as you entered, you would still be able to survive. You captured my people so that you could hide in the void for a long time. Then, you placed jade tablets in various locations. Once the space was formed, these tablets would automatically enter the space. All of this planning is enough to make you invincible. Long Chen and the others frowned slightly when they heard this. Long Chen and the others frowned. It was just as Void Scarstar had said. The jade tablets had already landed in the correct location. This 1,000-meter-wide stable space was a killing zone. Anyone who entered would be enveloped by the formation. Why was Void Scarstar not panicking in the slightest? His calmness made Long Chen and the others vaguely feel that this matter was not over yet. Long Chen's eyes narrowed as he looked at Void Star and asked in a deep voice, "Since you didn't immediately gather a few dozen people to kill me and instead waited until now, what exactly are you planning?" "I'm afraid these 300 people are only the first step." The two of them had yet to fight, but the short exchange between them had already shocked the people outside of the arena. The meticulousness of their thoughts far exceeded everyone's imagination. After Long Chen and the other three entered the arena, they used one method after another. The seemingly dangerous areas were actually resolved by him one by one, and he even turned defeat into victory. Now, he was even using a spell formation to intimidate the other heavenly space god clansmen. Before they understood this method, they didn't feel anything in their hearts, but now that they saw it, they felt a little shocked. They even began to look forward to seeing what other methods the Void Scar planet had up its sleeves. The dozen or so people led by Void Scarstar were all on high alert. Jianshi San and the others hadn't received Long Chen's orders yet, so they didn't dare to act recklessly. Void Star stared at Long Chen before looking at the jade tablets around them. "Why aren't you attacking yet? Could it be that you're really that scared?" Long Chen's expression remained unchanged upon hearing this. He grabbed at the air with his hands, and the space around them suddenly froze. The violent winds that had appeared due to the spatial turbulence instantly disappeared. Everyone's voices seemed to have solidified in the air, and the withered leaves and grass began to materialize in the air. Whoosh! All of the jade tablets glowed with dazzling light, and as the inscriptions on them flashed, a spatial power that was completely different from the one they had seen before began to wreak havoc. This power seemed to have caused the space within a radius of several thousand meters to freeze. Void Star and the others were rooted to the spot like wooden puppets. Their hair didn't even move in the slightest. Outside of the arena, Cold Moon Hollow's originally crazed and disheveled expression became even more terrifying. He was terrified that he would see Void Star die here at any moment. Of his three sons, Void Star was the only one left. The heavenly space god's descendants also stared intently at the two of them. They wanted to see how Void Star was going to deal with this formation. Now's the time. The crimson light around Void Star's body suddenly exploded, and he used his spatial power to forcefully break free from the ancient space ceiling formation. Bam bam bam. Bam 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 bam. A string of muffled booms erupted, and a jaw-dropping scene unfolded before everyone's eyes. The bodies of the dozen or so people behind Void Star were instantly pulverized into blood mist, and their souls were absorbed by Void Star. Roar roar. As soon as he did so, a terrifying roar sounded in the ears of Long Chen and the others. This roar seemed to have come from all directions, but it was also completely untraceable. Whoosh! The entire space was torn apart like a rag. Shockingly, it was the place where the jade steels were located. Long Chen and the others stared at the jade tablets as if they were facing a formidable enemy. At the place where the crack appeared, the power of nothingness shot out like lightning bolts and swallowed the jade tablet. One after another, the jade tablets were swallowed before disappearing into the spatial cracks. In the end, only 3 beasts were left. They tore through the sky and crawled out before Void Star. These beasts were over 10 meters long, and their bodies were completely transparent, as if they had been formed from clear river water. However, everyone knew that this wasn't river water. Instead, it was the power of time and space. These were strange beasts formed from the power of time and space. Countless people in the outside world were completely dumbstruck by the appearance of these 3 beasts. However, Cold Moon Void Star's hair was disheveled, and he began to laugh maniacally. Ha, my son has summoned spatial river beasts. These 3 spatial river beasts are all formed from the most fundamental laws of space. Furthermore, this place was personally created by you old fogies. Even though you've managed to condense the space here, it's still the most suitable place for spatial river beasts. Kong Hen Shui ignored the surrounding higher-ups and charged toward the center of the battlefield. At the same time, she roared, the space here was created by the higher-ups of my tribe, and it contains a terrifying amount of spatial power. Once these beasts devour this place, none of you will be a match for them. Swish swish. Just as she finished speaking, her body froze in midair. The heavenly space god tribe leader turned to Kong Hen Shui and said in a solemn voice, too many things have happened today. A dozen or so members of my tribe have also died. This is a personal feud between Long Chen and Scar Void Star's family. You'd better watch carefully. Chapter 1290. The appearance of the Spacetime River Beast really shocked everyone in all directions. Long Chen's advantage over the spatial river beasts was instantly nullified. Even though those who had retreated were still wary of the spatial river beasts, they were all waiting for a good show to unfold. The 3 spatial river beasts began to devour the surrounding space in a frenzy. At the same time, vast amounts of spatial power were converging toward them from all directions. This power was extremely impure, but as the spatial river beasts drew it toward them, all of the shattered space within the basin began to recover at a rate visible to the naked eye. The 3 spatial river beasts were devouring the spatial power left behind by the heavenly space god. As the 3 spatial river beasts behind Void Scar Star devoured the spatial power, he turned to Long Chen with a cold smile. This is your only chance to attack. Once the 3 spatial river beasts finish devouring the spatial power, you'll all die. This is why I told my father to do everything in his power to drag you into this event. Whoosh. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Scar Void's words were filled with confidence. He looked at Long Chen and the others as if he were looking at 4 people. All of the heavenly space god higher-ups on the spectators' stand sighed as they stared at Void Scar Star. Even the heavenly space god clan leader couldn't help but say, Void Scar Star's talent has attracted all of our attention. Who would have thought that Void Scar Star would be such a rare talent? In terms of intelligence and planning, he's definitely not inferior to anyone else. As soon as he finished speaking, the Scar Magatama on Scar Void Star's forehead moved. A spatial river beast stopped devouring and stood beside him. The 2 of them stood in a pincer formation, paying close attention to Long Chen's every move. They were doing this to prevent Long Chen and the others from interfering with the spatial power devoured by the spatial river beasts. In everyone's opinion, the 3 spatial river beasts and Void Scar Star should be able to put up a fight against Long Chen and the others. However, Void Scar Star was still so cautious. In everyone's eyes, his caution was enough to make Long Chen despair. Once all of the spatial power left behind by the higher-ups were devoured, the spatial river beasts would reach a peak in a short period of time. When that time came, this beast would most likely be able to completely fuse with the space here, and it would be virtually invincible against anyone other than the heavenly space god. If they weren't from the heavenly space god's bloodline, not to mention a 6th order god emperor, even an 8th order god emperor would have a hard time dealing with them. Void Scar Star had made such a move. Long Chen and the others didn't seem to have any intention of waiting until now. Long Chen suddenly took a few steps forward and waved his hand to signal for Jian Shan and the others to step back. He then said to Void Scar Star, "Don't worry, the 3 space river beasts can devour the power of space here. I won't stop them." Long Chen's words made Scar Void's body stiffen. He frowned as he stared at Long Chen, but soon after, he didn't believe Long Chen's words at all. He continued to stare at Long Chen cautiously. Could it be that Long Chen still has a way to defend himself? Why are you so sure? The 3 space river beasts have already devoured the power of space left behind by our clan's upper echelons. How can an outsider 5th order god emperor resist them? This person probably doesn't understand how terrifying the space river beasts are. If they attack now, they might be able to kill the one beside Scar Void. If they wait any longer, they won't have any chance. The people who had retreated because of Long Chen's formation were now standing around and discussing among themselves. As they spoke, more and more space began to condense. The area that was originally 1,000 meters wide had now become 10,000 kilometers wide. Time passed by slowly. After a full 15 minutes, the entire basin returned to its original state. There were no longer any spatial cracks, and it had become a solid piece of metal. Only the 3 space river beasts still exuded a suffocating pressure. This pressure caused the people in all directions to retreat. The space within the basin seemed to be cracking. The space river beast beside Scar Void was fine. However, the 2 space river beasts behind him that had devoured the power of space here had now grown a tail that disappeared into the void. Elder Su and the others wore grave expressions on their faces as they unleashed their heavenly god bloodline auras to the maximum. Zhu Zizhua and the others did the same. Long Chen stood several dozen meters in front of them. Scar Void roared, "I want to see how you're going to stop these 3 space river beasts." Roar, roar, roar. Following Scar Void's roar, the Scar Magatama soared into the sky. As the 3 space river beasts breathed in and out, the space around them was sucked into their mouths. Long Chen and the others were the first to bear the brunt of the attack. Zhu Zizhua and the others' expressions changed drastically. They felt as if their innate abilities were being devoured by the surrounding space. Rumble! A terrifying boom reverberated through the entire basin as a violet power soared into the sky. Boundless spatial power surged out like a tsunami. The space within the basin seemed to have solidified. This scene was extremely similar to when Kong Hen Shui was stopped by the heavenly god of space. There was nowhere to run. There was nowhere to run. Zhu Zizhua and Elder Su were only able to hold on for 4 or 5 seconds before half of their bodies were torn apart by the surrounding space. Jian Shan transformed into his sword soul form and hurtled through the air, unleashing thousands of terrifying sword intents towards Scar Void. Roar! Everyone raised their eyebrows in surprise at the terrifying sword intents. However, one of the space river beasts merely opened its mouth, and a gargantuan fissure over 10,000 kilometers in length appeared before swallowing all of the sword intents. Scar Void and the 3 space river beasts trembled violently with every step they took. However, just as he was about to control the space-time river beast to tear Long Chen and the others apart, he realized that Long Chen had disappeared without a trace behind the 10,000 miles long spatial crack. Scar Void was initially taken aback. However, he immediately understood what had happened as the space river beasts behind him let loose a low roar. "You still dare to enter the void? You're courting death." Just as he finished speaking, he pointed his right hand up into the sky, and the entire sky began to crumble. A series of spatial storms instantly engulfed the entire sky, and the entire space became as dark as night. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Such a terrifying attack was meant to directly crush Long Chen, who had escaped into the void. Long Chen wasn't a member of the heavenly god of space and time. Even if he could enter the void, he couldn't remain there for long periods of time. This attack was powerful enough to destroy everything within the void. However, the streaks of azure light caused the bodies of the heavenly god of space and time to stiffen. This was the power of the heavenly god of space and time. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Chapter 1291. Countless heavenly time and space god clansmen let loose cries of surprise, and a cacophony of voices swept toward them like a tsunami. What's going on? How can he possess such terrifying spatial power? Time and space seal. He's even manifested a time and space seal. I'm afraid there aren't many people in our race who can wield spatial power of this level. Could he be a member of our heavenly time and space god's bloodline? Could it be that he's a descendant of our race and the human race? Long Chen emerged from the void, and the time and space seal behind him stunned everyone. Even Scar Void's face paled in shock. His face was filled with disbelief. How is this possible? How can you possess the innate ability of our heavenly time and space god? A hint of unease finally appeared in Void Scarstar's voice. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Long Chen's body flashed, and he suddenly disappeared. In the next instant, he appeared on the back of a spatial river beast behind Void Scarstar. He was holding a spatial storm in his hand. The storm was like a gigantic spatial beast that soared into the heavens for thousands of kilometers, threatening to tear everything apart. Thump! Longchen had only just appeared when the spatial river beast's body instantly plummeted into the ground. Roar! In the instant that the spatial storm appeared behind him, Void Scarstar instinctively retreated in a frenzy. Meanwhile, the two spatial river beasts howled as they fled into the distance, as if they had encountered something extremely terrifying. This fear didn't stem from Long Chen's cultivation base. Instead, it stemmed from the vast spatial power around him. Whoosh! Long Chen waved his right hand, and the spatial storm wreaking havoc in the air began to shrink at a rate discernible to the naked eye. In the end, it shrank to a size of 3 inches in his palm. Gasp! Everyone couldn't help but draw a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. Such a terrifying spatial storm had been trapped in a spatial pill that was only 3 inches in size. One could imagine just how terrifying it would be if the power within it were to explode. This kind of method was truly breathtaking, causing one's heart to tremble in fear. Long Chen harumphed coldly as he looked down at the spatial river beast beneath his feet. Just as the dimensional river beast was about to escape from Long Chen's feet, it felt a raging force begin to tear its body apart. This river beast, which had devoured the residual spatial power of all of the heavenly space god higher-ups, had all of its power torn apart by the spatial power within its body. Woo, woo, woo. As the river beast whimpered, it disappeared into thin air. The spatial river beast was an extremely peculiar beast. These beasts only existed in the heavenly space god bloodline, and every single one of them roamed the void within the heavenly space god bloodline's territory. They wouldn't truly die, but if they wanted to grow back to their current state, it would take 1,000 years even if someone raised them. Long Chen had shattered all of the spatial energy within the space-time river beast's body. It was as good as dead. The other two-dimensional river beasts didn't seem to be very intelligent, but they seemed to have sensed Long Chen's terrifying power. The two of them actually moved closer to Void Scarstar, their bodies seemingly trembling. Only when Void Scarstar's hand landed on the river beast's body did he manage to ease its pain. Meanwhile, Jianshur-san and the others were already out of danger. They flew to Long Chen's side. Now that things had come to this, the outcome of this battle was self-evident. Void Scarstar ignored the pitiful gazes and stared at Long Chen as he said, "You have my race's Sky Magatama in your hands." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone's heart skipped a beat, but many of the higher-ups were still puzzled. Even if Long Chen had the Space Jade, he shouldn't be able to unleash such terrifying spatial power. After all, he wasn't a member of the Heavenly Space God bloodline. The Heavenly Space God bloodline leader also turned to look at Kong Hen Shui. If Long Chen had the Space Scar Magatama, then it was most likely hers. He was also a little confused. Even Kong Hen Shui herself couldn't unleash such terrifying spatial power, let alone an outsider. Not only that, he could see the shock on Kong Hen Shui's face as he looked at her. If Kong Hen Shui knew that her Space Jade possessed such power, she probably wouldn't have tried to stop Void Scarstar. Long Chen didn't deny this. He waved his hand, and a Space Jade appeared from his glabella. Everyone confirmed their suspicions the moment this Space Jade appeared. The aura emanating from this item was similar to Kong Hen Shui's. Void Scarstar shook his head and chuckled. He gradually dispersed the terrifying aura around his body and even sent the two spatial river beasts flying. He stared at Long Chen and suddenly asked, "Do you know why I share the same name as this planet?" Long Chen shook his head. Void Scarstar continued, "I changed this name when I was 10 years old. At that time, I swore that if I were to die, I would fuse all of my essence into this planet. Perhaps today is the day." As he spoke, his 10 fingers slowly began to tap in the air. He knew that he wouldn't be able to defeat Long Chen with the help of the spatial river beasts. He also knew that he wouldn't be able to defeat Long Chen and the others. His voice became cold as he yelled at his tribesmen, "All of you, get out. I want him to die with me. Today, I'm going to avenge Big Brother Lu Yun and Third Brother." All of the tribesmen within the basin who were hundreds of thousands of kilometers away from the two of them instantly turned pale upon hearing this, and they hurriedly rushed out of the basin. At this time, no one cared about the reception of this grand event. The event isn't over yet. They can leave, but you can't. Void Scarstar glanced at the heavenly space god higher-ups around the basin. As long as there was no victor in this battle, the heavenly space god clan leader and the others would most likely not allow them to leave. Rumble. Just as he finished speaking, the entire basin actually began to crumble inwards from the edge of the basin into powder. The entire space began to collapse, and countless spatial storms began to appear in the void. It was as if doomsday had arrived. You can suppress the spatial river beasts, but how can you stop them from destroying everything here? Void Scarstar muttered to himself. He wanted everyone to have no choice but to enter the void so that they could be destroyed by the spatial storms. A wry smile appeared on Long Chen's face upon seeing this. The spatial river beasts that had devoured the jade steels and fled into the void had always been a mystery to him. He didn't think that Void Scarstar would have such a trick up his sleeve. Perhaps the spatial river beasts were unable to unleash their full power because they were suppressing the jade steels, but they could easily shatter the void and create countless gale force winds. Even if Long Chen charged into the void with the jade hook, he probably wouldn't make it in time. He could kill Void Scarstar right now, but he wouldn't be able to stop all of this. In the next instant, dozens of spatial storms began to wreak havoc in the shattered void. Chapter 1292. Void Scarstar's resolute decision made all of the heavenly space gods' descendants sigh in amazement. No one would have thought that he would destroy everything and use the spatial storms to kill Long Chen and the others in the final moments. Under such circumstances, he was already in a situation where he would definitely die. Even though Long Chen and the others had Kong Henshua's space jade, they would still be annihilated by the spatial storms. Even the heavenly space god tribe leader wouldn't be able to tear through space in such a violent environment. The space within the basin began to crumble at a rate visible to the naked eye. Hundreds of spatial storms had already appeared within a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Long Chen and the others were less than 5,000 kilometers away from the center of the basin. This was their last chance to leave this place alive. Long Chen didn't think that Void Scarstar would have such a trick up his sleeve. The spatial river beast's actions left him with no choice. The Etion dragon bone had already begun to glow within his body. At this critical juncture, Cold Moon Void Scar charged into the basin with disheveled hair. He ignored everyone's attempts to stop him and even attacked the tribe leader before landing in front of Void Scarstar. "Stop! Tell the spatial river beast to stop." Cold Moon Void Scar glared at Void Scarstar with bloodshot eyes. He gripped Void Scarstar's shoulders so tightly that his fingernails had almost sunk into his flesh. Void Scarstar looked at Cold Moon Void Scar and said, "Father, what are you doing here? I'm going to avenge Lu Yun and Su today." "I'm not going to avenge them." Cold Moon Void Scar roared with rage, "I want you to live. Live." Void Scarstar looked at Cold Moon Void Scar's face, and he finally gave up. He brought his hands down, and a series of spatial ripples spread through the air. The shattering space came to an abrupt halt. At this moment, they were less than a kilometer away from each other. Cold Moon Void Scar pulled Void Scarstar into his arms before yelling at the heavenly space god tribe leader, "We're not going to avenge them. Let's drop this matter." As soon as he finished speaking, he seemed to have aged many years as he flew out of the basin with Void Scarstar. The heavenly space god tribe leader turned to Long Chen and shook his head in exasperation. "You should come out as well. No one will stop you from leaving." Now that things had come to this, Long Chen and the others couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Unless there was no other choice. Long didn't want to use the heavenly space god tribe. Every time he used, he would have been a burden on the heavenly space god tribe. Cold Moon Void God Tribe Leader, Cold Moon Void God Tribe, Void Scar Star God Tribe, Heavenly Space of God Star. Long Chen returned the Sky Magatama to Kong Hen Shui and said, "If it wasn't for this, I'm afraid that today would have been difficult." When Kong Hen Shui received the Kong Hen Magatama, he was incomparably shocked. However, when he recalled that the remnant soul of the Sector Lord was still in Long Chen's Dragon Palace, he understood. Void Scars Long Scars Chen S Chen's God Space Goddess. Scar Star S God S. S Scar of Let's part ways here. Since this matter has come to an end, it's best if we leave now. Long Chen bowed deeply to Kong Hen Shui. Kong Hen Shui hurriedly stepped forward to help Long Chen up. However, he suddenly smiled and said, "Don't be in such a hurry to leave. All of you are the last ones to walk out of the basin. According to the rules of our race, the last 10 people will be rewarded. Tribe leader, am I right? It's reasonable for them to enter the pagoda and choose some treasures." Kong Hen Shui's voice fell. The higher-ups of the heavenly space god tribe all furrowed their brows. After all, they were all members of the heavenly space god's bloodline. However, Long Chen and the others were all outsiders. Allowing them to enter the pagoda and choose treasures was against the rules. However, the heavenly space god tribe leaders suddenly waved a hand. Since they participated in this event, it's only right for them to do so. They can go up as many floors as they can in the tower and take whatever they can. Zhu Zizhua and Elder Su looked at each other, and an excited look appeared on their faces. They had taken this risk for nothing. The heavenly space god tribe had a high status in the star field, and they would definitely have countless treasures. Long Chen nodded in agreement when he saw everyone's enthusiasm. In the end, his gaze still fell on Void Scar Star. It had to be said. The two of them hadn't fought for much time today. In terms of cultivation, even though Void Scar Star had the battle prowess of a 6th Order God Emperor, Long Chen was confident that he could defeat him easily. However, Void Scar Star had left a deep impression on him. Just as Kong Hen Shui was about to leave with Long Chen suddenly turned to Void Scar Star and said, "If you want revenge, it's best if you don't drag others into this." Everyone's footsteps faltered, and they all turned to look at Long Chen and Void Scar Star. Void Scar Star stood behind Void Scar Cold Moon, and he stared at Long Chen without the slightest hint of fear in his eyes. "If I want to kill someone, I'll only kill you." Long Chen smiled and turned to leave. "I'll be waiting for you." 2 hours later. Many members of the heavenly space god tribe looked on enviously as Long Chen and the others were led to a pavilion by the higher-ups of the heavenly space god tribe. The pavilion was only a dozen or so meters tall, and it was a little short compared to the other buildings of the heavenly space god tribe. Chapter 1293. When Long Chen and the others entered the pagoda, the first chaotic star realm under the heavenly space god's jurisdiction had undergone a drastic change. The alliance of the 9 divine tribes had gradually recruited many primal chaos divine tribes to their side. These primal chaos divine tribes even declared that since the realm lord was absent, they should rule over the entire ancient sacred divine realm. They even came up with a jaw-dropping idea. They wanted to prevent anyone outside of the primal chaos divine tribe from reaching the peak stage of the God Emperor realm and becoming a titled emperor. This was to prevent the realm lord from being born from the primal chaos divine tribe. However, many primal chaos divine tribes didn't buy this idea. Many primal chaos divine tribes still followed the rules left behind by the ancient sacred divine realm lord. Regardless of whether they were from a small world or a myriad of other races, they could all become titled emperors. These two ideas appeared to be very simple, but they caused undercurrents to surge through the 5 chaotic star realms. The first chaotic star realm under the heavenly space god's jurisdiction had already been affected, and several primal chaos divine tribes had already opened up an intergalactic battlefield. While Long Chen and the others were still in the pagoda, all of the higher-ups of the heavenly space god's territory had already gathered for a meeting regarding the future. They were going to decide whether the heavenly space gods' territory should participate in this so-called alliance. This decision would determine who their opponents would be. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. A simple meeting came to an end amidst some commotion. In the end, the heavenly space gods' tribe leader made the final decision. It was to support the indestructible Tao law left behind by the Realm Lord. The fact that the ancient sacred divine realm lord was able to rule over the entire ancient sacred divine realm for so long was enough to explain everything. The human race had never been a weak race. Moreover, they still had Kong Inshua and Kong Henqing. One of them was the ancient sacred divine realm lord's woman. Inside the pagoda, Longchen didn't know that so much news had spread in the outside world during the past 3 days. At this moment, he, Zhu Zizhua, and Elder Su were all attracted by the item on the 3rd level of the pagoda. There was a chessboard at the center of the pagoda. There was only one black piece on the chessboard, but there were 49 white pieces. The name of the chessboard was engraved on a wooden board. Kong Xing's chess piece. This item did not seem to be of a very high grade on the 3rd floor. At the very least, Void Scarstar and the others were not interested in it. Long Chen and the others were extremely concerned about this item. The 3 of them had spent almost 10 hours on this item. They discovered that it was actually a spatial magic artifact. The entire chessboard was actually an extremely complicated formation, and the white pieces and black pieces had a peculiar connection. If Long Chen kept the white pieces in his hands, the other black pieces could be placed on someone else's body, and he could directly control that person to travel through space. This was simply a small group of portable teleportation arrays. Long Chen was really interested in this item because it was somewhat similar to the ancient Etian formation. Of course, its effect could be said to be worlds apart from the ancient formation inside the Etian dragon bone. This was also why Scar Void and the others had shown no interest in this item. As members of the heavenly space god's bloodline, treasures that were related to time and space were of little value to them. In the end, Zhu Zizhua chose the item before the 2 of them. When he left the pagoda, he directly tossed the 2 white pieces to Long Chen and Elder Su. Long Chen looked at Zhu Zizhua and couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. His motive for choosing this item was extremely clear: he wanted to protect his grandson, Zhu Ziyin. Zhu Ziyin was an extremely talented youth, and he possessed a rare innate talent among the heavenly destruction gods. With such talent, he was definitely not someone who would be content with his lot. With this chessboard, Zhu Zizhua gave the white pieces to Long Chen and the others, and then left the black pieces to Zhu Ziyin. If Zhu Ziyin encountered any danger, using the black pieces would mean that he could summon 49 helpers in a short amount of time. This was practically a life-saving divine item. This old man is practically a slave to his grandson. Let's continue to the 4th floor, Elder Su said to Long Chen. As they spoke, the 2 of them walked toward the stairs. It had to be said. The stairs on each floor of the pagoda contained a powerful spatial repulsive force. This was why the 3 of them had taken 3 days to reach the 3rd floor. The 2 of them had just reached the halfway point when Elder Su was sent flying by the spatial repulsive force, and he crashed into the 3rd floor. He laughed bitterly and said, "I've only walked halfway and I'm already sent flying back. It seems like I won't be able to reach the 4th floor. Let's choose from the 3rd floor." Long Chen walked up step by step, and he also felt a great pressure. However, he didn't fall down from the stairs. A powerful suppressive force forced him to stay where he was. This was the power of the world-suppressing cauldron on the halberd in his body. Long Chen hadn't thought of using the world-suppressing cauldron to help the 2 of them reach the 4th floor. However, the spatial repulsive force and the suppressive force of the world-suppressing cauldron were something that the 2 of them wouldn't be able to withstand. Even though he cultivated the Dao Yuan technique and had a powerful physical body, he still felt a great pressure. This pagoda was just like the grand event. It was built for the heavenly space gods' clansmen. 6th-order god emperors like Void Scarstar could easily reach the 4th floor, but the 2 of them couldn't withstand the spatial repulsive force. More than 4 hours passed. Longchen relied on the suppressive force of the world-suppressing cauldron to reach the 4th floor. As soon as he set foot on the 4th floor, Void Scarstar and the other 6 people frowned. They didn't expect him to reach the 4th floor. At this moment, Longchen didn't have Void Scarstar's jade hook on him. The spatial repulsive force on the 4th floor was something that only 7th Order God Emperors or 8th Order God Emperors had a 70% chance of reaching the 4th floor. Longchen looked at the frowns on everyone's faces, and a faint smile appeared on his face. "Why are you looking at me like that? Do you want to chase me out?" Void Scarstar looked deeply at Longchen and replied, "I lost the battle in the basin. I won't attack you and the Heavenly Space God's clansmen anymore. However, I have to remind you of something. Every single item on the 4th floor of the pagoda is protected by a layer of spatial defensive energy. The purpose of this is to prevent outsiders from stealing them." Longchen nodded and cupped his fists at Void Scarstar, who had stopped beside a pair of wings. This pair of wings was exactly the same as Void Scarstar in flowing clouds. Longchen's gaze swept across the 4th floor, and when he saw that Void Scarstar and the others had no intention of going to the 5th floor, he asked, "Don't you want to try the 5th floor? Do you know what's inside?" As he spoke, he walked towards the staircase leading to the 5th level. Chapter 1294. He couldn't even stay on the 4th level? Longchen's footsteps faltered slightly. He was a little confused, and he was even more curious about what was on the 5th level. Otherwise, why would the heavenly god of space and time warn him like this given his grudge against Void Scarstar? Longchen had just arrived at the 5th level when he suddenly felt as if an earth-shattering change had taken place before his eyes. The entire staircase was like a cliff, and the path ahead had completely disappeared. Rumble. A terrifying repulsive force surged toward Longchen like a sharp blade piercing toward the space between his eyebrows. Longchen instinctively flew backward and landed on the 4th level of the pavilion. Longchen couldn't help but feel a little surprised. However, he was also a little excited. There was definitely something extraordinary on the 5th level. Otherwise, why would there be such a terrifying restriction? Even a portion of the world suppression cauldron's power couldn't suppress it. Void Scarstar and the others couldn't help but snort coldly when they saw Longchen being forced back by the restriction. One of them even sneered coldly. "If you're forced back again next time, there's a chance that you'll be blasted out of the pagoda. At that time, things will get interesting." Longchen ignored everyone's words and waved his right hand. He actually pulled out his halberd. Under everyone's watchful eyes, he walked toward the staircase again. He won't cry until he sees the coffin. This restriction isn't something that can be broken through with brute force. Furthermore, he's an outsider. Amidst everyone's chatter, another rumbling sound erupted. Longchen had actually ascended 3 levels in a row. Kong Henshua's hand, which was still picking out items, suddenly froze. He couldn't help but frown as he looked toward Longchen. He only heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Longchen had no choice but to stop. Whoosh! The halberd in Longchen's hand suddenly glowed with a purple light. The second seal of the world suppression cauldron revolved around his body, and a terrifying suppressive force caused everyone's expression to change. Void Scarstar and the others instinctively retreated into the distance. Thump, thump, thump. Before the purple light had even dissipated, Longchen had ascended another 3 levels. Rumble. The rumbling sound from before reverberated throughout the pagoda. Meanwhile, outside the pavilion, all of the heavenly space god higher-ups' expressions changed, and someone exclaimed, "There are still 9 people inside trying to break through to the 5th level of the pagoda. Open the space-time eye in the pagoda and see who is trying to break through to the 5th level. Could it be the Void Scar planet? That's impossible. His understanding of the Tao of space shouldn't have reached such a level. It can't be that human called Longchen, right? Kong Henshua, don't tell me that your Sky Magatama is still in his hands." When Kong Henshua heard this, he snorted coldly. With a wave of his hand, he retrieved the Sky Magatama. Only then did the crowd feel at ease. The heavenly space god clan leader's expression also seemed to be a little dark, and when he turned around, a pair of gray and white eyes appeared on the fourth level of the pagoda. This eye transmitted the scene inside the tower to the outside of the pavilion. How is this possible? It's really that human. He clearly doesn't have any more Sky Magatama in his hand, so how is he still able to charge towards the fifth level of the pagoda? Aside from Kong Henching, no one from our tribe has ever set foot on the fifth level of the pagoda. How is it possible that an outsider has reached the middle of the stairs? Don't panic. He might not be able to reach the fifth level. He might not be able to withstand the power of the steps above and below. Just as everyone was discussing spiritedly among themselves, Long Chen's entire body was enshrouded in purple light. Then, he charged into the air and disappeared at the end of the stairs. Everyone instantly fell silent. No one dared to believe their eyes. Many of the higher-ups were glaring coldly at Kong Hen Shui. This is all because of you. If you didn't allow them to enter the pagoda, how could an outsider like him have the chance to reach the fifth level? A human who isn't a member of our heavenly space god clan has actually managed to reach the fifth level of the pagoda. Clan leader, give the order to detain him right now. The heavenly space god clan leader and Kong Hen Shui's expressions darkened upon hearing this. Kong Hen Shui replied, "What?" The clan leader personally allowed them to enter the pagoda. Besides, the reward for this event is to enter the pagoda. When did he say that they couldn't reach the fifth level? Everyone was momentarily at a loss for words. The heavenly space god clan leader gestured with his hands, and everyone instantly fell silent. Indeed, this isn't their fault. If he really did manage to retrieve the item from the fifth level of the pagoda, then it would be the will of the heavens. Everyone shook their heads in exasperation. They felt as if the entire heavenly space god clan had been turned upside down by Long Chen and his group. Within the pagoda, Void Hen Shui and the others were all standing in front of the stairs that led to the fifth level. Their expressions were one uglier than the other. Is the restriction broken? How could an outsider like him charge up like that? A man who only possessed the consciousness was extremely indignant. Before Void Hen Shui could say anything, he had already charged up the stairs. Just as he set foot on the third level, the spatial aura around him was instantly shredded to shreds. Then, he was sent flying down before crashing into the wall and disappearing without a trace. Void Hen Shui and the others instantly fell silent. They knew that the outsider who had attempted to reach the fifth level had already been forcefully expelled from the pagoda. There was nothing wrong with the restriction, which meant that Long Chen really did possess the right to enter the fifth level. Who the hell is this guy? Void Hen Shui muttered to himself. For some reason, a sense of powerlessness welled up in his heart. Within the fifth level of the pagoda, Long Chen's body was riddled with ghastly wounds. When the purple light around his body and the realm suppression cauldron's power dissipated, there was even blood gushing from his wounds. What a terrifying spatial seal. If one's spatial power couldn't surpass the restriction, then perhaps no one would have been able to pass through these stairs. Long Chen was still feeling a little fearful. If it weren't for the realm suppression cauldron and his halberd, he probably wouldn't have been able to reach this level. His flesh and blood began to regenerate, and his injuries were healed in just a few dozen breaths. These injuries didn't appear to be serious, but in reality, Long Chen knew that if the stairs had been 2 more levels, he would have most likely been shredded to pieces. According to the incomplete soul of the Divine Emperor, there were probably only a handful of people in the entire heavenly space god clan who could enter this level of spatial restriction. The requirement for one's spatial power was simply too high. In reality, Long Chen's ability to enter this level could already be considered as an opportunist. He didn't even use his own spatial power. He also didn't possess any spatial power at all. After recovering from his injuries, Long Chen hurriedly surveyed his surroundings. To think that there would be such a terrifying restriction on the stairs from the 4th level to the 5th level. There was definitely something extremely rare here. That thing has been in our possession for so many years, but no one has been able to truly comprehend it. If he really can obtain that item, then it is a stroke of good fortune." Void Scar let out a low sigh, shook his head, and retreated. Inside the tower. In the instant that the greenwood appeared, the entire 5th floor was illuminated by its azure light. All of the mythological beast souls on the branches lowered their heads at the sight of Long Chen. Long Chen looked at the 9 mythological beast souls and said, "Don't worry, all of you will reappear in this world one day and fight alongside me." Long Chen still remembered the words of the Emperor's incomplete soul. In the chaotic star of stars, there were still the bodies that he had created for the mythological beast souls. Each of these bodies possessed the power of a pinnacle god emperor, and they were also the bodies that were most compatible with the mythological beast souls. Buzz buzz buzz. As he spoke, the light emanating from the greenwood became even more dazzling. The greenwood seemed to have come to life, and it rose into the air before landing on the table. A series of azure roots pierced into the ancient wooden table before extending into countless thin and long branches that wound around each of the tree rings on the table. As Long Chen looked at this scene, he seemed to hear the weeping of an old man. The light on the ancient wooden table gradually disappeared, and the flat surface of the table began to wither. On the other hand, the greenwood's radiance became even more dazzling, and each of its branches began to thicken. By the time the greenwood tree's brilliance was withdrawn, it had already grown another 2 meters in length. Its entire body was covered in ancient bronze-veined patterns, and the divine beast soul on its branches was even more tyrannical and oppressive. Long Chen took a deep breath, waved his hand, and put away the green wood. Then, he sighed and swept the table again. As soon as his right hand touched the table, the entire table turned into powder and disappeared from the world. Although the ancient wooden table had disappeared, the inkstone was still standing in the same place. It turned out that this item was not placed on the table, but was floating in the air. The clear glaze of the inkstone and its azure ripples made people unable to help but take a few more glances. Long Chen looked at the inkstone and suddenly remembered something. He was actually not moved out of the pagoda. Before Old Su, there were people who took things from the 3rd floor. Once they chose an item, they would be suppressed by the power of the pagoda. This power would gradually increase, and anyone who was inside would have to leave by themselves. Once they touched another item, they would be directly blasted out, and even the item in their hands would be taken away. After everyone entered the pagoda, there might have been a rule set outside that they could only take one item. This was also the most strange thing about Long Chen now. Right now, he actually did not feel the slightest repulsion from the pagoda. After a moment, Long Chen could not help but reveal a smile. With a thought, rays of divine light suddenly appeared in all directions. Countless crushed powder actually rolled back in the air, and once again turned into the ancient wooden table. The greenwood directly swallowed the ancient wooden table, and the remains of the ancient wooden table were actually still here. It actually did not trigger the restriction of this place. If he did not touch the ancient wooden table, it was afraid that the ancient wooden table would still be there at this moment. If that's the case, I can still choose another item. Long Chen was suddenly in a good mood. His gaze gradually fell on the inkstone. He could not see anything about the chairs on both sides at all, so naturally, he did not have any thoughts about it. At this moment, he did not want to continue to study the inkstone, so he directly picked it up and prepared to leave the pagoda. The inkstone was in his hand. As expected, the space in all directions gradually repelled him. He turned around and was about to walk down the stairs of the 5th floor. Long Chen had just taken a few steps when he suddenly stopped, and he felt all the hair on his body stand up. The Emperor Lord's remnant soul snorted coldly, and directly rapped him with a powerful thought. The halberd in Long Chen's hand shook, and he turned around abruptly, but he found that there was still no one around. The scene had not changed at all. What's going on? Who was spying on me just now? Long Chen frowned, and his face became serious. The Emperor Lord's remnant soul pondered for a moment, and the soul that wrapped Long Chen suddenly fell toward the flower scroll that Long Chen had been ignoring. Rumble. Chapter 1296. The Divine Emperor's remnant soul collided with the painting, causing the entire fifth level to tremor violently. Unexpectedly, the picture scroll fell directly into the air. Longchen didn't hesitate in the slightest as he placed the inkstone back into its original spot. The power of rejection around him also disappeared. He walked to the front and waved his hand to grab the scroll. The painting landed in his hand. A cool sensation instantly swept through his entire body. Longchen used the Emperor Lord's remnant soul to store him into the Dragon Palace. He then turned around and walked towards the fourth level. Ascending each level was extremely difficult, but descending was a walk in the park. When Longchen arrived at the fourth level, Void Hen Xing and the others had already chosen their items. Their expressions darkened as they looked at Longchen. A pair of wings appeared on Scarvoid's back, just like Scarvoid in Flowing Cloud. Everyone followed closely behind Longchen as they walked out. Longchen had only just walked out of the pagoda when the power of rejection around him suddenly disappeared. The elders of the heavenly space god bloodline followed closely behind their clan leader as they made their way toward Longchen. Kong Henshue and Kong Henqing blocked Longchen's path as they hurriedly said, "Aren't you in a hurry to leave? Since this matter is over, you should hurry up and leave." Longchen immediately understood Kong Henshue's intentions when he saw the ashen expressions on the faces of the heavenly space god bloodline. He bowed toward Kong Henshue and the heavenly space god bloodline before shooting a meaningful glance at Jianshi San and the others. Then, they all flew into the distance. Kong Hen Tuabo and the other elders looked at Longchen's departing figure. They didn't care whether Kong Henshue was present or not. Should we inspect the pagoda and see what's missing? Are we really going to let them leave? The heavenly space god bloodline's clan leader fell silent for a moment. He didn't answer anyone's question. Instead, he entered the treasure pagoda. When he entered the fifth level of the pagoda, the power of space around his body surged, allowing him to completely ignore the pressure on the stairs. When he set foot on the fifth level, his eyes immediately fell on the place where the painting had been stored. His body froze on the spot, and then he said in shock, "He actually took that thing away. My clan has had it for so many years, but no one has been able to touch it." As soon as he finished speaking, he discovered the abnormality of the table. There was no space energy on it at all. Buzz. The moment his palm touched the table, the entire ancient wooden table turned into ashes once again. "Who is this brat?" The heavenly space god clan leader faltered momentarily before a wry smile appeared on his face. On the other side, Longchen led everyone away from the Void Scar Star, where the heavenly space god resided, at an extremely fast speed. It wasn't until the Scar Void Star gradually disappeared behind them that they finally stopped after passing through a spatial tunnel. Elder Su and Zhu Zizhua couldn't help but ask Longchen, "What did you get from the fifth floor? Didn't you see the state of the heavenly space god's elders outside?" Longchen smiled and waved his right hand. A picture scroll appeared in his hand. At this moment, the picture scroll was completely enveloped by the Emperor Lord's remnant soul, but there seemed to be nothing wrong with it. "Just one painting?" Zhu Zizhua looked doubtful. Qing Xian and Jianshi San also came over. They stared at it for a long time, but they couldn't sense anything. In contrast, Elder Su's brows were tightly furrowed, and he seemed to be a little hesitant. After a long while, Elder Su said in a solemn voice, "I think I've seen this somewhere before. Can I take a look at it?" Longchen raised his eyebrows. Even the Emperor Lord's remnant soul didn't seem to have any clue about this thing, but Elder Su was able to see through it. He withdrew the Emperor Lord's remnant soul and revealed a corner of the picture scroll. Elder Su pressed two fingers together and pointed toward it. Whoosh! Before his fingers even landed, he felt a terrifying divine intent sweep toward him. Zhu Zizhua hurriedly shielded Zhu Xin behind him with an expression of shock on his face. Longchen hurriedly used the Emperor Lord's remnant soul to seal it again. This picture scroll was a little strange. It contained an extremely terrifying divine intent that could only be suppressed by the Emperor Lord. Elder Su's eyes flashed. This picture scroll contains such divine might, and it was obtained from the heavenly space god. Could it be a realm transference soul tome? Realm transference soul tome. Before Longchen could say anything, Zhu Zixue asked in confusion, "This is clearly a picture scroll. Why is it called a realm transference soul tome?" Elder Su replied in a solemn voice, "I've seen this item in an ancient book in the Heavenly Light Gods clan. It's said that this picture scroll isn't unique. There are a total of 4 scrolls, and they are collectively known as the Realm Transference Soul Tome." The Emperor Lord's remnant soul was also enlightened by Elder Su's words. "I remember this book now. It's said that this thing can be used to travel between the 4 divine realms, but no one has ever succeeded." Upon hearing this, Longchen finally understood why the Emperor Lord's remnant soul didn't think of this item. As the ruler of the ancient sacred divine realm, he could leave the ancient sacred divine realm and head to other divine realms at any time. He naturally didn't care about this kind of teleportation formation at all. Longchen put away the picture scroll. He didn't have any intention of using it for the time being. This thing was mysterious and unpredictable. It would definitely be useful in the future. I need to find the next location of the primal chaos dragon bone. Then, I'll enter the heavenly space-devouring god star prison and rescue the other 2. Longchen said to everyone. Elder Su and Qing Xian didn't mind, but Zhu Zixue felt a little helpless. With his personality, if Zhu Xin didn't want to follow Longchen, he definitely wouldn't take this kind of risk. The last time he followed Longchen to the star prison, he was hunted down by tens of thousands of people from the heavenly space-devouring god's bloodline. This time, the danger was probably several times higher. However, Zhu Xin directly agreed on his behalf. Everyone couldn't help but laugh. Jian Shen walked to Longchen's side and bowed respectfully. "Master should know what I'm thinking." Longchen saw that Jian Shen's face was slightly troubled. He directly walked up to him and patted his shoulder. "This isn't the first time we've separated. You should walk your own path. From start to finish, this is already the 3rd time we've separated. Every time I see you, I have a whole new level of respect for you. I hope it'll be the same next time." Jian Shen nodded and slowly retreated. Then, he transformed into a sword soul and soared into the sky. If a person was obsessed with something, then they would definitely be extraordinary. Jian Shen was destined to be extraordinary. His sword would one day shake the entire ancient sacred divine realm. Qing Xian watched as Jian Shen left. He said to Longchen, "The Imperial College has already sent me a message through a secret technique. They've also discovered the location of the primal chaos dragon bone. According to what they know, there's almost no power that knows about the location of the primal chaos dragon bone. However, there are 2 powers that are fighting over it. Where is this primal chaos dragon bone?" Longchen raised his eyebrows and indicated for Qing Xian to continue. Chapter 1297. Longchen immediately recalled the location of the Chaos Dragon bones that the astral wings had told him. As expected, there was indeed a marker near the black whale star cluster. After a short moment, he nodded and said, "Let's set off for the black whale star cluster now. We must obtain this item before the other Chaos Divine tribes discover it." The black whale star cluster had already reached the border of the first Chaos Star cluster. To be more precise, it bordered the second Chaos Star cluster. The cluster was formed by countless planets, and these planets were more like the star wheels behind the space-devouring god's bloodline. Most of them couldn't even be considered planets. They were the remains of many planets. Some of the remains contained star cores. As such, the primal chaos force within them was extremely rich even though it was extremely messy. Of course, Chaos Divine tribes like the Heavenly Space God wouldn't even bat an eyelid at this level of energy. As this energy accumulated over a long period of time, it gave birth to many strange star beasts. This place was located at the border of 2 Chaos Star clusters, and very few people would come here. As such, the number of star beasts increased over time. The black whale star beast was one of them. These star beasts were enormous, and their entire body was covered in whiskers. They ate chaos energy and all kinds of ores that contained energy. It was precisely because the population of this species had gradually increased that the name of this constellation had also spread. Recently, someone had heard that a black whale was about to reach the Sixth Order God Emperor realm. If this matter were to reach the ears of any Chaos Divine tribe, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, it was a huge problem for the two cities that were built near the Scarlet Light Sea. Everyone knew that. Star beasts were completely different from humans. Once they stepped into the Sixth Order God Emperor realm, they would awaken their innate ability. They were almost no different from the Chaos Divine tribe. After the era of the Holy World Lord, apart from the various Chaos Divine tribes and humans, countless other demonic beasts had to reach the Sixth Order God Emperor realm. Even though the ancient Holy World Lord wanted everyone to reach the Sixth Order God Emperor realm, he had personally suppressed many people who wanted to become a titled Emperor Lord. Everyone in the ancient Holy Divine world knew about this. This was also why the Chaos Divine tribe had participated in the battle where the ancient Holy World Lord died. They all wanted to reach the World Lord realm. However, they didn't know that the Emperor Lord's remnant soul had told Longchen that only one World Lord could be born. It was the same for the ancient sacred divine world and the other divine worlds. The great Tao of all things led to the same destination. Tao begets one, one begets two, two begets three, and three begets all things. All Taos in the inner realm return to their original selves at the end. 3 return to 2, 2 return to 1, and 1 return to Tao. Whether it was the human race or the various divine races, all of them were the primes of all living things. Their cultivation could prove their Tao imperceptibly. Star beasts, however, were completely different. The two cities spanned no more than hundreds of thousands of miles, and most of the people living in them did not have high cultivation bases. No one knew which Chaos Divine race or Chaos Divine race was behind the construction of these cities, but they had become a hub that connected the first and second Chaos starfields. They relied on their geographical advantage to earn resources. Once the Black Whale Star Beast successfully reached the Sixth Order God Emperor realm, the Black Whale Star Group would undergo earth-shattering changes. Once one of these star beasts gained sentience, it would definitely become the leader of the entire race. If that was the case, it would be a pipe dream for these two cities to travel between the two star fields in the future. The two forces traveled through the Black Whale Star Group at an extremely fast speed, and they killed all of the Black Whale Star beasts they could find. Almost all of them were exuding an extremely dense aura of blood and gore. The divine light around their bodies was of different colors, and their auras were vastly different. It was clear that they were not from the same Chaos Divine race. Is the information accurate? If the Black Whale Star Beast really is still in the Black Whale Star Group, then why haven't we found any news of it after searching for over a month? A human in a black robe with a face full of scars yelled at the Chaos Divine race beings behind him. All of the Chaos Divine race beings had scales all over their bodies, but all of them wore respectful expressions upon seeing the scar-faced man. We've already invited a member of the Heavenly Star God bloodline to come here. He should be able to arrive tomorrow. The Heavenly Star God bloodline specializes in divination techniques. Regardless of whether the Black Whale Star Group is here or not, we'll definitely be able to find it. Lu Ba nodded and gestured for everyone to continue searching, as if he didn't want to waste any time. Everyone was just about to continue onward when several streaks of divine light shot through the air toward them. Everyone stopped in their tracks again, and they instantly turned to look at the newcomers. These were none other than Long Chen and the others. However, there was a faint azure divine light enshrouding Long Chen's body, and there were 3 azure scales on his glabella. Everyone's eyes instantly lit up at the sight of Long Chen. Lu Ba made his way over to Long Chen and extended a respectful salute toward him. You're from the Heavenly Luck God bloodline, right? Another group of people quickly approached them as they spoke. The leader of this group furrowed his brows, and a hint of confusion appeared in his eyes as he looked at Long Chen. The Star-Seeking Hall clearly informed me that you only arrived near the Moonlight Planet today. Why are you here now? And who are these people beside you? Can't the Star-Seeking Hall provide even this level of confidentiality? The Star-Seeking Hall was a massive organization established by the Heavenly Star God bloodline in the first chaotic star realm. This organization had connections with almost all of the Chaos Divine race beings. In reality, this was why the Heavenly Star God bloodline was ranked among the top 10 Chaos Divine races in the first heaven. Lu Ba couldn't help but feel a little suspicious upon hearing this. However, Long Chen's aura and the 3 scales on his glabella were exactly the same as the Heavenly Star Gods. Qing Xian and the others followed behind Long Chen, and their expressions didn't change in the slightest. Long Chen said in an indifferent voice, "The Star-Seeking Hall has its own arrangements. If you don't need my help, then I'll leave right now." Long Chen's words instantly caused the expressions of the 2 groups of people to turn ashen, and the atmosphere instantly became a little tense. Elder Su took this opportunity to step forward. "Please don't misunderstand, everyone. We also encountered a fellow cultivator from the Heavenly Star God bloodline on our way here. After completing your mission, he'll be following me to the Heavenly Light God bloodline to participate in an important alliance matter. Everyone, please hurry up and bring out the items with the aura you're looking for." An important alliance matter? As soon as these words were spoken, the eyes of the 2 parties immediately shrank. The alliance formed by the 9 Chaos Divine races was quite renowned, so it made sense that they needed a member of the Heavenly Star God bloodline. Chapter 1298. Due to the timing of Long Chen's arrival, Zhang Zishan was still a little suspicious of his identity. Lu Ba and the others all turned to look at Long Chen with rapt attention. Zhang Zishan's caution was not without reason. The survival of the 2 cities depended on whether or not they could capture the black whale. If you don't believe in divine abilities, then there's no need for that. However, I do know some things about you. Would you like to hear them? Long Chen asked. Zhang Zishan faltered upon hearing this before a cold smile appeared on his face. The Heavenly Star God's bloodline can find out what they want to know through the traces of auras left behind in the starry sky. Why don't you tell me what you can glean from me? If you can tell me, then I'll believe that you're a member of the Heavenly Star God's bloodline. Only then can we proceed with our cooperation. If you make a single mistake, then you won't be able to leave this place alive. There were several hundred people from the 2 powers, and all of them possessed powerful cultivation bases. From this, one could see just how much importance they placed on the black whale. You're a member of the Heavenly Nature God's bloodline, and you can disguise yourself as the Heavenly Storm God's bloodline. The weapon in your hand looks sharp, but it's actually made from willow wood. Long Chen's expression remained unchanged as he spoke to Zhang Zishan. Zhang Zishan's expression immediately darkened upon hearing this. The surrounding people also had strange expressions on their faces. Only Lu Ba and a few others who were at the front of the line nodded slightly. What he said was not wrong at all. Zhang Zishan harumphed coldly. "Tell me more, Your Excellency. It's not difficult to obtain this information if you put in the effort." Elder Su and the others' expressions darkened upon seeing this, and they were about to step forward. However, Long Chen waved a hand to stop them. A hint of a smile appeared on his face. "Do you really want me to continue?" Zhang Zishan chuckled coldly. "What? Do you have other preparations? You're clearly a member of the Heavenly Nature God's bloodline. It's one thing for you to disguise yourself as a member of the Heavenly Storm God's bloodline, but you've also used some kind of mystic technique to fuse the powers of other divine tribes into your bloodline. This method of fusing the innate powers of all the divine tribes into one allows the power of the Heavenly Nature God to flow through your left heart acupoint. However, the powers of the other divine tribes are mutually exclusive and interdependent." "Wait." Long Chen's words sent a chill down Zhang Zishan's spine, and he quickly stopped him from continuing. The expressions of the surrounding people also became somewhat gloomy, and some of them even subconsciously put some distance between them. In a sense, the practice of fusing the innate talents of other races was despised by all Chaos Divine clans. Although their two major cities were a mix of good and bad people, and there was no so-called division of Protoss forces on the surface, this practice still made them somewhat conflicted. What shocked them even more was the fact that Longchen was able to clearly see the circulation route of the technique. If Longchen had really revealed the rest of the acupuncture points, there was a 70% chance that the people present would have taken Zhang Zishan's life. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Longchen stared at Zhang Zishan and asked, "Can you show me the item with the aura of the black whale?" The corner of Zhang Zishan's eyes twitched, and he quickly nodded. It had to be said. Longchen's simple words had truly frightened him. He was already convinced that Longchen was a member of the Heavenly Star God's bloodline, but he still couldn't help but curse the star-seeking hall in his heart. The message from the star-seeking hall clearly stated that the person who had come was still near the Moonlight Planet, so it appeared that there was definitely a problem with the timing of the message. Zhang Zishan pondered this for a moment before handing over a piece of flesh with a shiny black beast hide to Longchen. Longchen's brows furrowed as he accepted the item, but he had already obtained a lot of information. This is the item that the person who first discovered the black whale obtained from its body. This is the only clue we have to find this black whale among the countless black whales in this constellation of stars, Lu Ba couldn't help but say to Longchen. It wasn't difficult to tell from his tone that he was already quite anxious. The fact that the black whale had already begun to shed its beast form meant that it could reach the 6th stage of the Divine Emperor stage at any moment. Longchen had learned about the Star-Seeking Hall and the Heavenly Star God's bloodline from Qing Xian and the Imperial College, so he decided to disguise himself and come here a day in advance. He only had one objective, and that was to obtain the item that contained the aura of the black whale. Longchen and the others weren't fully prepared, but it wasn't difficult for them to do so with the incomplete soul of the Divine Emperor. At the very least, they were able to fool Zhang Zishan and the others. Longchen imprinted the aura of the black whale into the incomplete soul of the Divine Emperor before returning the item to Zhang Zishan. After a short while, Longchen said, "It's still in the constellation of stars, but you won't be able to find it with what you're doing now. The bloody aura of the black whales that you've killed along the way is a warning to it that it'll flee as soon as you approach it." Everyone came to a sudden realization upon hearing this. This was the black whale constellation of stars, and the black whales had lived here for a long time, so they would be able to detect any abnormalities as soon as they arrived. Longchen saw everyone nod in agreement before leading them deeper into the constellation of stars. At the same time, he pointed at the void in front of him with his right hand. Streaks of light green light condensed in the air like silk threads, and then penetrated into the distance. Upon seeing Longchen's actions, Zhang Zishan and Lu Ba were even more certain that he was a heavenly star god. However, they didn't know that this streak of light wasn't an innate ability at all. Instead, it was an item that had been slightly disguised as a condensation of divine power. The direction that this item was traveling in was completely determined by the incomplete soul of the Divine Emperor and Longchen. Under Longchen's guidance, everyone ventured deeper and deeper into the constellation of stars. More and more black whales were traveling through the constellation of stars. They didn't dare to attack these black whales anymore, and instead used all sorts of methods to avoid them. Even so, it was inevitable that a few battles would occur. For hours had passed since he started walking. The path that Longchen led everyone forward gradually brought them back to the edge of the constellation of stars. Lu Ba couldn't help but ask Longchen, "Why are we back here again? If we continue like this, when will we find the black whales?" Just as he finished speaking, a few people began to murmur behind him. Then, someone yelled, "That's not right. If we continue like this, we'll reach the left flank of the constellation of stars. There are no black whales there. Instead, there are 3 constellations of stars that have just been destroyed. There are many dead spirits within the constellation of stars, and they could collapse at any moment and cause a tide of destruction. It's too risky for us to go there now." Lu Ba and Zhang Zishan immediately came to their senses upon hearing this, and they hurriedly stopped in their tracks. The tide of destruction caused by the destruction of 3 constellations of stars was no small matter. Chapter 1299. Longchen led Qin Xian and the others toward the left flank of the constellation without stopping at all. With the power of the Emperor Lord's remnant soul and the aura of the black whale's flesh, he was certain that the black whale was here. He had led them around the constellation just to make them lower their guard as much as possible. At least, he wanted them to believe that he had found the black whale's tracks based on the aura it left behind. After Longchen and the others left for a while, the two teams hesitated and followed closely behind them toward the left flank of the constellation. It was just as everyone had said. The left flank was completely different from the constellation they had just passed. There was not even a single star beast. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Everyone could feel waves of power surging toward them like tidal waves, and they could even hear faint rumbling sounds coming from the waves. This sound made everyone behind them very uneasy. Zhu Zizhua even shielded Zhu Xin behind him. He and Elder Su looked at each other solemnly. They did not know much about the so-called star destruction tide, but it was evident that the hundreds of divine emperors behind them were so vigilant. The tide-like ripples became more and more obvious. As the three stars appeared in front of them, they were like raging waves crashing against the shore. Everyone could not help but stop in their tracks. Even Longchen could not help but narrow his eyes when he saw the scene in front of him. There were countless cracks on the three scorched stars, and there was some kind of crimson liquid under the cracks. Every time the liquid flowed, the entire star would shake more violently. The huge stars were not as huge as before. They were only tens of thousands of miles long and wide, but they changed greatly as they rose and fell. They could even become the size of a fist when they breathed in and out. This strange scene reminded Elder Su and the others of the scene when Longchen compressed the space storm. They finally understood why Lu Ba and the other two teams were so afraid of the so-called star destruction tide. If these three stars attracted each other, once they were destroyed, the power of the tide would be unimaginable. If they were not covered by the countless wreckage in the constellation, it would be enough to crush them all. Zhang Zishan took a deep breath and asked Longchen in a deep voice, "Where's the black whale? This is not a place to stay for long." Only God knew when the three scorched stars would suddenly be destroyed. They were standing so close to each other that it was practically suicide. Longchen shook his head. His eyes were still fixed on the three scorched stars that were constantly expanding and contracting. He muttered, "The thing you are looking for is in one of the stars." As soon as these words came out, everyone immediately burst into an uproar. "Are you kidding me? How could there be anything in this kind of star wreckage? The liquid within the corpse of a heavenly body tier elite is the power of the entire star core. It has already become chaotic, and the slightest carelessness could cause a destructive tide. How could that black whale possibly be hidden within it? If what you said is true, are we going to detonate the tide of destruction of these three stars?" When Longchen heard everyone's words, he moved his right hand. The light thread that had been searching for the black whale rushed into the ripples of the three stars and disappeared without a trace. The power emitted by the three stars is too terrifying. I can only confirm that the black whale is in one of the three stars. Everything else has nothing to do with me, Longchen said to everyone in a deep voice. When Lu Ba saw Longchen's actions, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. If that black whale really hid in one of the three stars, then they really had no way to deal with it. They couldn't even detonate the three stars with their own hands. The destructive tide of these three stars could very possibly follow any power they left behind and directly devour them. No one was willing to take this risk. However, Zhang Zishan seemed to have thought of something. He frowned and asked in confusion, "Why would he hide in this star? Isn't this action equivalent to suicide? Once he breaks through, the destructive power is enough to cause the collapse of such an unstable star. At that time, the first person killed by the destructive tide will be him. What else do we have to worry about?" Everyone was stunned by Zhang Zishan's words. Then, they looked at each other and breathed a sigh of relief. They had originally come to kill the black whale, but if the black whale couldn't possibly be alive, why would they take the risk to bombard three stars that were about to be destroyed? Longchen spoke again, "This matter has nothing to do with me. Maybe he just happened to pass by when we were chasing after him and felt that he couldn't escape from us, so he instinctively hid in one of the stars. Longchen finished speaking and was about to leave with Qing Xian and the others. The people behind Lu Ba and Zhang Zishan couldn't help but urge them to leave. It was obvious that they didn't want to cause any more trouble for the 3 stars that were about to be destroyed. As they spoke, everyone was about to leave with Long Chen and the others. The tides emitted by the stars around them gradually weakened. Only then did they stop moving. At this moment, there were already many stars around them. Even if the 3 stars were destroyed, they wouldn't lose their lives. Lu Ba and Zhang Zishan ordered in a low voice, "Everyone, spread out and surround this place as safely as possible. Wait until the destructive tide appears. We have to make sure that the black whale died here." I keep feeling that something is wrong. After the 2 of them gave their orders, the hundreds of people behind them split up into groups of 3 and left. Only 10 Sixth Order God Emperors were left behind. When Longchen saw this scene, Elder Su took a step forward and said to the 2 of them, "Since this matter has come to an end, I will take my leave first. There is an urgent matter in the Alliance that requires the assistance of the Heavenly Fate God bloodline." As soon as he finished speaking, he gestured for Longchen to leave. After taking a few steps, Zhang Zishan suddenly shouted, "Everyone, don't be too impatient if you want to leave now. Also, I have something to ask you. 2 of you are from the Heavenly Destruction God bloodline, and 1 of you is from the Heavenly Light God bloodline. What about this woman? She seems to be an ordinary human. According to what I know, when the 9 Chaos Divine races returned from the continent, they despise the human race the most." Elder Su frowned when he heard this. He immediately snorted coldly and said, "Aren't you meddling too much? You don't need to worry about the Alliance." As soon as Elder Su finished speaking, Zhang Zishan suddenly burst into laughter. If she is from the Alliance, why does she seem to have such a close relationship with the Heavenly Fate God bloodline? His gaze landed on Qing Xian and Long Chen. Only then did everyone realize that Qing Xian, intentionally or otherwise, was much closer to Long Chen than to Elder Su and the others. Zhang Zishan's expression gradually turned cold. Chapter 1300. The relationship between Qing Xian and Long Chen raised Zhang Zishan's suspicions once again. At this moment, they hadn't seen the black whale with their own eyes, so they were naturally on high alert. When Long Chen heard Zhang Zishan's words, he took a step forward and said in a solemn voice, "If you're still worried, we'll wait with you for a while." Long Chen gestured for everyone to calm down. Zhang Zishan signaled with his eyes, and the 10 people behind him spread out and surrounded Long Chen's group. After a long while, Lu Ba stared at Long Chen's group and said to Zhang Zishan, "He's a member of the Star-Seeking Hall after all. Since he wants to leave, he has nothing to do with this matter." Zhang Zishan didn't reply. Long Chen sneered and said, "Even though he has doubts in his heart, he's only hesitating whether to kill me to prevent me from revealing the secrets in his body. However, he's right. I'm not a member of the Heavenly Fate God's faction." Before Zhang Zishan and the others could react, Elder Su, Zhu Zizhua, and the others asked, "Are you sure the rest of the people have gone far?" Long Chen nodded his head. Everyone under the Emperor Lord's remnant soul had already left, and they wouldn't be able to make it back in time. Out of the original several hundred people, only Zhang Zishan and a dozen others were left. Zhang Zishan frowned and looked at Long Chen's group. "You 3 Fifth Order and 6th Order God Emperors might not be able to defeat us." It wasn't that he didn't know that the others wouldn't be able to provide reinforcements in a short time, but he thought that the remaining 10 people would be enough to suppress Long Chen's group. Lu Ba snorted coldly and said to Zhang Zishan, "You're right. If he's not a member of the Heavenly Fate God's faction, how did he see through your secrets? If he really knows our weaknesses, we can't let our guard down." The people behind them didn't seem to care. Long Chen and the others could see through many things, and they didn't think that defeating Long Chen's group would be difficult. Among the 12 of them, 3 were 5th Order God Emperors. Other than Lu Ba and Zhang Zishan, who were 7th Order God Emperors, the rest were 6th Order God Emperors. In their opinion, killing Long Chen, a 5th Order God Emperor, and 2 6th Order God Emperors would be a piece of cake. Before everyone moved, Long Chen said to the 2 people beside him, "Let's end this quickly. We need to leave this place as soon as possible. The 3 stars are about to release the destruction tide." When they heard Long's group's words, their faces turned. Long's nonsense. Zhang's group's group. To Long Chen SSS. More than a dozen God Emperors attacked at the same time. The terrifying aura of primal chaos swept out for thousands of miles in an instant. The debris of the meteorites in all directions was crushed into powder. Lu Ba and Zhang Zishan pressed down on Long Chen at the same time. They were still a little afraid that Long Chen could see through Zhang Zishan's weakness. When the 2 of them charged over, Long Chen actually had no intention of dodging at all. Instead, he had Qing Xian and Zhu Xin stay behind him. Buzz! Long Chen took his time to complete his task. The 2's attacks were like a tsunami crashing down on him. His right hand made a grabbing motion, and the halberd appeared in his hand. With a low rumbling sound, the first seal on the halberd was broken. Lu Ba and Zhang Zishan were shocked to see Long Chen's halberd move. Even though Long Chen was only a 5th Order God Emperor, he released a terrifying power. Purple light filled the sky, and an evil force tore the 2's attacks apart like a giant hand. Rumble! The halberd shattered half of Zhang Zishan's body, and even Lu Ba's legs. Hiss! Lu Ba sucked in a breath of cold air. He didn't even have time to heal his legs. Using some kind of secret technique, he retreated rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he was 10,000 meters away from Long Chen. Zhang Zishan's reaction wasn't slow. A bright light flashed in his mouth, and a bead appeared in the air and wrapped around his remaining body. At this moment, Elder Su, Zhu Zizhua, and the others had yet to fight with the other 10 people. The 10 people stopped in their tracks. They stared at Long Chen as if they were staring at a monster. They didn't dare to step forward and fight with Elder Su and Zhu Zizhua. What's going on? Isn't he just a 5th Order God Emperor? How can a 5th Order God Emperor have such terrifying battle strength? Lu Ba and Zhang Zishan are both 7th Order God Emperors. Although they are only at the first layer, they shouldn't be opponents that 5th Order God Emperors can contend with. 2 7th Order God Emperors could easily suppress a large number of 5th Order God Emperors. After all, there was a difference of more than 10 levels between them. However, Long Chen's actions had exceeded their understanding. A 5th Order God Emperor not only remained unscathed under the joint attack of 2 7th Order God Emperors, but he also heavily injured them in one move. This kind of terrifying battle strength was unimaginable. The 10 people looked at Elder Su and Zhu Zizhua, but they didn't dare to move. It was as if they were afraid that their battle strength was different from ordinary people. On the other side, who the hell are you? Lu Ba retreated 10,000 meters away. He glared at Long Chen and shouted, "You're not a member of the primal chaos divine race. How can you have such terrifying battle strength?" Long Chen didn't answer Lu Ba's question. Instead, he disappeared from where he was standing. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Zhang Zishan. The halberd in his hand carried a mighty power. It was as if a giant mountain was falling from the sky. Purple light poured out like a tsunami. Rumble! The light that Zhang Zishan had condensed using some kind of secret treasure was shattered in an instant. Zhang Zishan's eyes were filled with fear. Before he could recover, he was killed by Long Chen. Long Chen crushed Zhang Zishan's soul with his halberd. Then, he looked at Lu Ba and the others and said, "I know you've ordered the people who just left to return, but isn't it a little too late now?" Lu Ba and the others looked at Zhang Zishan's dead body. Their clothes were drenched in cold sweat. 7th Order God Emperor. That was a 7th Order God Emperor. Long Chen killed Zhang Zishan in just 2 or 3 moves. This scene was too shocking. At this moment, Lu Ba had lost all his fighting spirit in an instant. Run! Every single one of you who can escape is one of us. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Ba disappeared from the sky at a speed that was invisible to the naked eye. The remaining 10 people turned into streaks of light and fled in all directions. When Longchen saw this, his gaze fell on Lu Ba. The purple halberd in his hand began to condense at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, it was as if there was an additional purple shell around it. Swoosh! The halberd pierced through the sky and flew in the direction Lu Ba had fled. Others can leave, but you can't. Otherwise, today's matter will be troublesome. Longchen muttered as he watched the halberd disappear from his sight. Chapter 1301. No one knew if Chang Ji could kill Lu Ba or not. Longchen had no intention of waiting for Chang Ji's return. He led the group and flew out. Qing Xian asked, "Young master, is the black whale really in the wreckage of the 3 stars that are about to be destroyed?" Longchen nodded. He did not lie to Zhang Zishan and the others about this matter because he had also discovered the terrifying power of the 3 stars. Even if he told them about this place, it was impossible for them to enter the wreckage to capture the black whale. What if he dies in the wreckage of the 3 stars? Zhu Zizhua interjected. Longchen saw that everyone had left and found a place to hide. He replied, "The tide of destruction will erupt from the 3 stars, but it may not be able to kill the black whale." Qing Xian and the others were stunned. Zhu Ziyin, who had been the most silent throughout the journey, said, "The power of the Chaos Dragon Bone is related to life force." Longchen nodded and looked deeply at Zhu Ziyin. Zhu Ziyin was the descendant of the heavenly destruction god and the human race. He had saved the Tao of disaster by using the power of destruction to create life force. The first thing that came to his mind was that the Chaos Dragon Bone inside the black whale was related to life force. After all, the fact that the black whale could withstand the tide of destruction from the 3 stars was enough to explain everything. The Chaos Dragon Bone is a divine ability that the Realm Lord comprehended after observing the rise and fall of the divine world for 100,000 years. It is called the Wheel of Life and Death. Longchen did not hide anything from everyone. 100,000 years. Everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. They finally understood why Longchen brought them as far away from the black whale as possible. Once the black whale broke through to the 6th Order God Emperor realm, and with the support of the Chaos Dragon Bone, its battle strength would be extremely high. Moreover, once the tide of destruction was released, the terrifying power would be enough to sweep away everything around it. The several hundred people left behind by Lu Ba would bear the brunt of the attack. If they wanted to make a move, they would have to choose to be behind the black whale. Only then would they be able to reap the benefits. As soon as everyone finished speaking, before the tide of destruction appeared, they saw a person covered in blood-red light tear through the air from afar. His speed had almost reached a shocking level. "Sir, please spare my life." Before this person even got close, everyone could already tell that this person was Lu Ba. The purple edge halberd was only a few meters away from him. When the halberd arrived, Zhu Zizhua and Elder Su both felt an extremely evil aura. For some reason, this energy made them feel an extremely cold sensation. It was completely different from the chaotic energy in Longchen's body. The few of them subconsciously retreated. Only Longchen stood where he was without moving. At that moment, Lu Ba was in an extremely wretched state. His aura was in a state of disarray and most of the blood in his body had been drained due to the use of the secret technique. If it wasn't for that, he probably wouldn't have survived until now. Longchen stared at Lu Ba, and the corners of his mouth revealed a faint smile. He waved his right hand, and the halberd stopped. The halberd stopped. Lu Ba stood in the air, not daring to make the slightest movement. He could feel the cold and evil energy behind him. The halberd was less than an inch away from his body. Lu Ba's legs were trembling, and he looked at Longchen with a pleading expression. "Sir, please spare my life. From now on, I'll be at your service." At this moment, he was in awe of Longchen to the extreme. He couldn't imagine that Longchen could force him into this situation with just a halberd. The terrifying power contained in the halberd was beyond his imagination, especially the purple light around it. It was simply a destructive power. Zhu Zixue and Elder Su sighed when they saw this scene. A 7th Order God Emperor didn't even have the qualifications to protect himself in front of Long Chen. Just a halberd was enough to suppress him. Long Chen's cultivation seemed to be at the 5th Order God Emperor realm, but he was probably at the 7th Order God Emperor realm or higher. Long Chen's finger moved slightly, and the evil purple light around the halberd shattered inch by inch. The halberd returned to his side. He stared at Lu Ba and said, "I'll only give you 2 chances to speak." In fact, Long Chen didn't want to let Lu Ba live, but he didn't expect Lu Ba to be able to come to him alive. Zhang Zishan was already dead, and the remaining people didn't have high status. Even if the news spread, no one would care. Of course, Long Chen guessed that it was more likely that these people would not dare to spread the news. They would most likely choose to flee this place. They had seen Long Chen's strength with their own eyes, and no one wanted to provoke such an enemy. Lu Ba and Zhang Zishan were different. Since the two of them could represent 2 cities to lead hundreds of 5th Order and 6th Order God Emperors, it was enough to prove their status. If they let Lu Ba go, they would be in big trouble in less than half a day. The halberd contained Huang Xiaolong's full strength, not to mention the rich nefarious energy within it. Killing a 7th Order God Emperor was a piece of cake. 2 sentences. Lu Ba almost bit off his own tongue. Since he cultivated to the God Emperor realm, when had he suffered such humiliation? A dignified 7th Order God Emperor realm expert had fallen to such a state. He had to rely on others to stay alive. I remember now. You're the human who spread the news of the heavenly god-devouring clan. It's said that you're the first person to capture the astral wings from the Devil Abyss. Lu Ba's eyes narrowed as he looked at Qing Xian and the others, then at Long Chen. Suddenly, he shouted out Long Chen's origin. Lu Ba's sudden shout made Long Chen frown. This person was probably just guessing. If he really knew what Long Chen and the others looked like, he wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Moreover, the heavenly god-devouring clan wasn't that close to this place. The first sentence won't save your life. In fact, it might even cause you to die even faster. Long Chen said coldly. For some reason, Lu Ba calmed down a little. His trembling body gradually calmed down. He stared at Long Chen and said, "I've seen the heavenly god-devouring clan's document about you rescuing Kong Henshua from the Star Prison. It seems like you're missing a sword cultivator. However, your reaction tells me that my guess is right. You're that group of people. I can help you save the others in the Star Prison." Long Chen was about to kill Lu Ba, but he was stunned by Lu Ba's words. Even though Lu Ba was more confident, he still felt like he was grabbing onto a life-saving straw. He hurriedly said, "I've always had some understanding of the heavenly god-devouring clan. The reason I've stayed in these 2 cities for several hundred years is to find a way to enter the Star Prison." A way to enter the Star Prison. Enter the Star Prison? You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.